I'm in my early 30s, and I'm a bus driver. I'm also the youngest driver at the depot, but a lot of people probably think driving a bus at my age is a dead-end job. But I don't care. I'm not stealing or robbing anyone. I'm making an honest living. Aside from not having a girlfriend, life's not to be at the my day starts at 5 a.m. sharp when I pull out of the station. I'm back at the starting point by 7. Then I do another round trip in the afternoon, and I'm usually clocked out by 4:30 that I've only got myself to feed, so I'm pretty content. Life is good. Captain Wu is our team leader. He's from Texas. Pretty much everything that happens at the depot, big or small, has to go through him first. You know that saying, you can't outsmart a fox, and you can't outdeal a Texan. He's exactly that type. A sly old fox who wouldn't lift a finger if there wasn't something in it for him. Sunday was my day off, and I was having an incredible dream. I was dreaming that I was dating Scarlett Johansson. We'd had dinner, seen a movie, and I had just taken her hand when suddenly the whole world started blaring the Macarena. At first, I was confused. It wasn't time for the seniors' line dancing, so why was that song playing? Then, seeing the confused look in Scarlett's eyes, I jolted awake. I fumbled for the screaming phone on my nightstand, hit the answer button, and snapped irritably. Are you crazy? Who calls at this hour? There was a pause on the other end. Then came Captain Wu's annoying Texan drawl. Lee, my boy, it's Captain Wu. You at home? Stop sleeping and get down to the depot. We've got an emergency meeting. Even though I really didn't want to, I grunted and and hung up. When the company calls, you have to show up, even on your day off. It's the rule. I did a quick wash-up, skipped breakfast, and rushed over. When I got there, Captain Wu's office was already packed with my colleagues that I managed to squeeze into the room. When Wu saw me, he gave me a nod and said, "All right, that's everyone. Let's get to it." The city sent down a notice last week. They want to add a new route from here to the old paper mill. Today, we're going to decide who's driving it. What? The paper mill? That place is a ghost town. There's hardly anyone out there. Who are we running a bus for? The moment Wu finished speaking, one of the older drivers in the crowd started grumbling, but Wu's brow furrowed. It's not your job to worry about who's riding it. The city wants another route. If you got a problem with it, take it up with City Hall. What are you whining to me for? Seeing Wu get angry, no one else dared to speak up. He scanned the room, then continued. This route is just one round trip a day, and then you're off. The driver who takes it gets an extra $500 a month in bonus pay. That got the crowd buzzing again. One trip a day, and you get an extra $500? I'll do it. Me too. Seeing everyone jump at the offer, Wu looked around with a smug grin. See? Did you think I wouldn't fight for a good deal for you guys? You think you call me Captain Wu all day for nothing? After he said that, a few of the usual brown-nosers started clapping. As the applause spread, Wu's smile grew wider. He let his eyes drift across the room again. I had a bad feeling about that look of his. Sure enough, Wu spoke again. So, I've laid out the job and the money. It is what it is. It's a good gig, but there's one tiny little catch. It's a night shift. What? A night shift? I knew there was a catch with just one trip and extra pay. A night bus to the paper mill? What's it for? Picking up ghosts. Yeah, I've heard that area out by Crow's Hollow isn't clean. People say it's haunted. Listen to you guys. What ghosts? You're grown men, afraid of the dark. There's a village out that way. Some of the villagers complain to the city that they come into town to sell vegetables during the day and have no way to get back at night. So, to make it more convenient for them, the city approved this route. What? Those villagers sell at the night market until 10 or later. What time does this bus leave? Wu pursed his lips, a sly smile playing on his face. 11 p.m. The paper mill was way out in the suburbs, in a really remote area. Leaving the main terminal at 11. Even with no traffic, it would take at least an hour to get there. That meant the return trip from the paper mill would start around midnight. Thinking about that, I lost all interest in driving this route. I leaned against the doorframe and let out a yawn. Seeing that no one was volunteering, Wu coughed awkwardly. Come on, you're professional drivers. Since when did you get to be so picky about routes and times? Old Lee couldn't take it anymore. Captain Wu, it's not that we don't want to drive it, but we've all got wives and kids at home. You're talking about getting back at 2 or 3 in the morning. The kids will be asleep. We can't be disturbing them when they have exams, right? That's right, my kid's got finals too. He's in middle school. My kid too. He's a junior in high school. He's got the SATs. My kid's a junior in college. He's got finals. To get out of driving the night bus, all their kids, no matter their age, were suddenly about to face the most important exams of their lives. While I was silently cursing them for being so shameless, Wu's gaze seemed to find me in the crowd. He gave me a knowing smile and said, "Lee, my boy, to use your generation's lingo, you're still single, right? No kids, huh?" Every old driver in the room whipped their head around to look at me. I was speechless. Before I could say anything, a hand clapped down on my shoulder. "Lee, you're young. This is the time to be working hard and making money. Go for it." I was about to protest when another hand landed on my other shoulder. "Lee, there's less traffic at night. It's an easy drive. Plus, a lot of young ladies take the bus late at night. It's a good opportunity, you know." Before I could even open my mouth to refuse, the guys acted like it was a done deal, laughing and shuffling out of the office. The room emptied in an instant, leaving just me and Captain Wu. The wrinkles on Wu's face bunched up like a dried-out cabbage. He gave me a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Lee, it's come to this. Don't say no. Tell you what, I'll apply to get you an extra 200. That's 700 more than everyone else." I found it laughable and was about to curse him out, but Wu beat me to it, grabbing my hand. He pressed a set of car keys into my palm. "Don't worry about your day's shift. I'll get it covered. From now on, you'll be driving 2386, the one parked in the northwest corner. If you need anything, just let me know. Your Captain Wu is counting on you." I tried to speak again, but Wu waved his hand and scurried out the door. When he was halfway out, he turned back and added, "Oh, rightly. That notice came last week, but I just remembered it last night. It's a bit of a rush, so you'll have to start tonight. 11 o'clock sharp. Don't forget." From the beginning of the meeting to my new assignment, I hadn't said a single word. I'd just been railroaded into a new shift. Staring at the keys in my hand, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. In the end, I figured what the hell, an extra $700 a month meant I could afford some better cigarettes. That evening in the cafeteria, Old Tang brought his tray over and sat down next to me. He leaned in and whispered mysteriously, "Hey, buddy, what's this I hear? Wu's making you drive the late shift to the paper mill." I shoveled a mouthful of rice and nodded. "Dude, are you crazy? You think that paper mill route is just any old road?" I could tell there was more to what Tang was saying. I turned to look at his serious face. "What's up, Tang? It's just a night shift, no big deal. I'm young, full of energy, and still a virgin. What's there to be afraid of?" Tang shook his head with a look of resignation. "You haven't been at the company long. You don't know the history. You really think those old-timers refuse the route because they're afraid of the dark or waking up their kids?" Hearing that, I felt a knot in my stomach. I put down my chopsticks. "What do you mean, Tang? There's something else." Tang gave a bitter smile and lowered his voice. "That paper mill line existed 10 years ago. The first driver who took the night shift drove a full bus straight into the reservoir. You think that's a coincidence?" I managed a relieved smile. "Come on, Tang. We're drivers. Accidents happen. It's part of the job. What's so strange about that?" "Not strange." Tang got agitated. He put down his own chopsticks and leaned so close his mouth was next to my ear. "The second driver and the third driver both did the exact same thing. Drove a full bus straight into the reservoir. In half a year, 3 drivers and 3 busloads of people. All gone." The smile on my face froze instantly. I asked Tang, "If something that big happened, how come I've never heard anything about it?" Tang glanced around to make sure no one was listening before continuing. "You think you would have heard about it? The city stepped in, paid off the families, and buried the story. But we just got a new mayor, probably some guy who doesn't believe in superstitions, so he reopened the route." After hearing what Tang said, a wave of cold fury washed over me. Captain Wu definitely knew about this. He didn't just give me this job. He shoved me into a death trap. Tang saw the look on my face and patted my arm. "Look, man, we're friends. That's why I'm telling you this. Maybe it really was just a series of accidents, bad road conditions, or something. But since you've taken the job, just be extra careful." I nodded and pulled a fresh pack of Marlboros from my pocket, handing it to him. "Thanks, Tang. I've been here a year, and you're the only real friend I've made." Tang pushed my hand away, his face etched with worry. "Don't be like that, man. Seriously, if anything happens, you call me. If I can help, I will." I insisted he take the cigarettes. In this day and age, you can't ask for much more than a friend who's willing to tell you the hard truth. After dinner, I went looking for Wu, furious and ready to give him a piece of my mind, but he was nowhere to be found. I sat in my dorm room, my stomach in knots, until 10:30. I debated for a long time, but in the end, I climbed into the driver's seat of bus number 2386. My hands were on the familiar steering wheel, but my palms were slick with sweat. I gritted my teeth and thought, I'm not afraid of anything. I'm still a virgin, for crying out loud. With that thought, I started the engine. As I drove past the security guard's booth at the gate, I glanced inside. What I saw sent a chill down my spine. The old security guard was standing at his window, his eyes wide open, staring at me with a look of pure terror on his face. It's only 7 stops from the depot to the paper mill, but the trip takes a full hour. In our line of work, we call that a short long haul. If my buddy Tang hadn't told me all that stuff at dinner, I wouldn't have given it a second thought. But the look on his face was dead serious. He wasn't joking. Most importantly, there was a mandatory stop at the reservoir called Tang's Hollow. The reservoir had been used as a private fishing pond by some local big shot over a decade ago. But then he went bust for some reason, skipped town, and the reservoir had been abandoned ever since. The reservoir itself was still about half a mile from the village of Tang's Hollow. There were only a few scattered houses out here. All I could hope for was that no one would be waiting at the reservoir stop, so I could just step on the gas and blow right past it. Not long after leaving the main depot, a large group of villagers began to board. They came in small groups of 3 or 5, carrying shoulder poles with wicker baskets full of leftover vegetables, chatting and laughing cheerfully. This eased my nerves quite a bit. I figured I'd done the right thing taking this paper mill route. These villagers had been selling produce all day, and if it weren't for this return bus, they'd be stranded in the city for the night. When you think about it, the money they make in a day isn't even enough for a motel room. They'd probably just have to find a deserted alley to curl up in. Once we left the city limits, no one else got on. The villagers were likely exhausted after squatting at the market all day, and the bus gradually fell silent. Sitting in the front seat across from me was an old man in his 60s. His skin was tanned dark from the sun, and a grimy white towel was wrapped around his head. Even though it was already 11:30 at night, the old man seemed wide awake. He pulled out a long stem pipe, looked up at me, and asked, "Hey kid, mind if I light up?" I glanced at him. "Go ahead, Pops. You're by the window. Smoke if you want." The old man nodded, struck a match to light his pipe, and took a long drag. "You seem like a good kid," he said. "How'd you end up in a job like this? Didn't study hard in school, huh?" His comment rubbed me the wrong way. I muttered back, "What's wrong with my job? It's a good job." The old man blew out a puff of smoke and let out a dry chuckle. "A good job? What's good about it? Sitting here all day, not moving, risking your life, and for what? Pennies." The job of a bus driver is seen as a dead-end gig by a lot of people, and that was a sore spot for me. Because of this job, the matchmakers had set me up with several girls, but it always ended the same way. They looked down on my profession, and things fell apart. Thinking about this made me impatient. "You've got it all wrong, old man," I said. "If I wasn't driving this bus, you'd be sleeping under a bridge tonight." The old man seemed to catch the edge of my voice. He fell silent for a while, just puffing on his pipe. Then he stuck it out the window, tapped out the ash, and said, "We're getting close to the reservoir, kid. Slow down." He didn't need to tell me. I'd already started easing off the gas from a good distance away. I wasn't about to forget what Tang had told me. There was a bus stop right by the side of the reservoir. I saw no one under the sign, so I kept driving past without stopping. As my headlights swept over the sign for Tang's Hollow, a chill ran down my spine. I decided this was a good chance to ask the old man about what Tang had mentioned. "Hey, old-timer," I started. "I heard from a coworker that something bad happened out here at the reservoir a while back. Is that true?" The old man seemed to have been expecting the question. He nodded slowly. "Yep, something happened. A driver drove his bus, full of people, straight into the reservoir." It was the exact same story Tang had told me, but hearing it again from this old man, I felt a fresh wave of anxiety. My curiosity, however, pushed me to ask more. "How did that happen? This road looks fine, and there's hardly any traffic. How could an accident like that happen?" He saw a ghost. The moment those words left his mouth, I nearly slammed my foot on the brake. The bus lurched to a stop, jolting many of the sleeping villagers in the back awake. A few of them, confused, started shouting in the local dialect. What the hell was that? I forced myself to stay calm and yelled over my shoulder, "Sorry, folks. Bad road. Had to swerve around a pothole." The villagers were clearly annoyed. Someone started cursing. "This driver's nuts. Something wrong with his head? Why doesn't he go get checked?" The comment was nasty, and on a normal day, I would have fired back. But it was the middle of the night, and these were uneducated country folk. I couldn't be bothered to argue that I wasn't in the mood to chat with the old man anymore. I still had to drive this bus back to the depot by myself later, and there was no point in scaring myself silly. I glanced sideways at the old man. He didn't seem interested in talking either, just kept his head down, smoking his pipe. He'd been puffing on that same bowl of tobacco since he got on, and it still wasn't finished. It hit the stroke of midnight, The bus finally pulled into the paper mill, the final stop. The villagers all got off. I stretched and was about to start the engine for the return trip. Suddenly, a pale-faced old woman appeared at my window, banging on the glass with her hand. Thump, thump, thump. A cold sweat broke out over me. The villagers had all gotten off ages ago. Where did this old woman come from? Gritting my teeth, I leaned down, grabbed a wrench from my toolbox, and clutched it tightly. I opened the door and barked, "What do you want?" The old woman's face was a mess of overlapping wrinkles. It looked like if she got any older, her features would just blur together. Seeing the door open, she slowly climbed aboard, looked at me, and said in a small voice, "Oh, dearie, I left my basket on the bus." I looked back, and, sure enough, there was a vegetable basket on one of the back seats. I let out a sigh of relief. The old woman went to the back, retrieved her basket, and had one foot off the bus when she slowly turned back to me. "You're such a nice young man," she said. "But is something wrong with your head?" I was completely confused. "What are you talking about, Grandma? Just because I hit the brakes hard once, you're all going to keep insulting me." The old woman shook her head with effort, pointing to the seat across from me. "The whole way here, you were staring at that seat, talking to yourself. It was real creepy." When I heard that, a fresh wave of cold sweat drenched my back. My hands on the steering wheel began to tremble. That I looked at the empty seat, then stammered, "W, what are you talking about? Talking to myself?" I was chatting with the old man who was sitting there smoking his pipe the whole time. "Grandma, maybe your eyes aren't so good." The old woman got visibly angry and pointed a finger at me. "My eyes are just fine. That seat has been empty ever since I got on." "Are you lying? You're crazy." Muttering insults under her breath, she picked up her basket and shuffled away. I was in a full-blown panic. I had been talking to that old man the entire trip, and now she was telling me I was talking to myself. The countryside was eerily quiet, eerily dark. Beyond the small circle of light cast by my headlights, there was nothing but pitch black. The cold sweat was just pouring off me, and in no time, the back of my shirt was soaked through. I checked my watch. 12:10 a.m. It was another hour's drive back to the depot. I seriously considered calling for a tow truck to just haul me and the bus back. Just then, a blaring, cheesy pop ringtone shattered the silence. I nearly jumped out of my seat. It was Tang. I quickly answered. "How's it going, buddy? Made it? You heading back yet?" I felt like I barely had the strength to speak. "Tang," I whispered, "I just got here. I'm so damn scared. I don't even have the strength to put the bus in gear." Tang heard the panic in my voice. "What's wrong, man? Nothing happened, right? Don't work yourself up. Listen, I just talked to a fortune teller for you. He said your birth chart is rock solid. The master said with your kind of luck, you could go dig up graves at night and be totally fine." Hearing this, I suddenly felt like I'd won the lottery. No way, really? Did he really say that? Of course. The master said your 5 elements are pure yang energy. There's not a trace of yin weakness in your destiny. Even ghosts would give you a wide berth. Suddenly, the world seemed full of light. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Holy crap, did he really say that? Look at you, you coward. A strong fate like that is wasted on you. All right, hurry back. I bought some beers. They're waiting for you in the dorm. Tang hung up. That phone call was a lifesaver. I felt a surge of strength coursing through me. In that instant, it was like I had become the master of the world's darkness. That I slammed the bus into gear and started the engine. I roared out loud. "Come and get me, you little devils. Your daddy's here. Come on." The drive back flew by. I was humming a tune as I pulled smoothly back into the depot. Everyone in the dorm was asleep except for Tang, who had a spread of beer and snacks waiting for me in my room. The moment I walked in, I gave him a huge hug. Tang didn't look particularly happy to see me. He just said quietly, "Buddy, you finally made it back." Something fell off. "What's wrong, man?" I asked. "With my kind of luck, what's the big deal about when I get back?" Tang sighed. "Brother, I was afraid you'd scare yourself too much to drive back, so I made up the part about the fortune teller. Don't be mad, okay?" His words made my smile freeze on my face. So I didn't have a fate that made ghosts run away? Suddenly, I thought of the old man, and a cold draft seemed to blow across the back of my neck. Before I could even process it, Tang put a hand on my shoulder. "Buddy," he said, "I asked around today. In the past 10 years, right before the 3 drivers had their accidents, they all picked up an old woman who had left her vegetable basket on the bus. You didn't run into anyone like that tonight, did you?" Hearing that, it wasn't just a cold draft on my back anymore. I could feel the sweat pooling in the soles of my shoes. Lao Tang saw me frozen to the spot. He gave me a light pat on the shoulder. "Hey man, what's wrong? You're sweating bullets." It took me a moment to come to my senses. I told Lao Tang about the old man I'd met on my route earlier, and the old woman who came back for her vegetable basket at the end. After hearing my story, Lao Tang sat on the edge of the bed, lost in thought. He was silent for a long time. Finally, he motioned for me to sit down next to him and began to speak slowly. Man, if what you're saying is true, you're in some serious trouble. One of them, the old man or the old woman, has to be something unclean. I sighed, grabbed the bottle of liquor from the table, and took a long swig. Wiping my mouth with my sleeve, I felt a fresh wave of anger wash over me. I cursed under my breath. That Lao Wu is a real piece of work, sticking me with this godforsaken route. If I die because of this, I swear I'll drag him down to hell with me. Lao Tang grimaced at my words and spat on the floor. Hey, don't say things like that, man. It's bad luck. With that, he snatched the bottle from my hand and took a heavy gulp himself. Seriously, back when I was a young long-haul driver, I saw it all. Getting lost in places that make you walk in circles, driving past old burial grounds. I've seen more than my fair share of weird stuff. As he said this, something seemed to click in his memory. Oh, that's right. I actually know a guy, a master who knows about this kind of thing. Here, I'll give you his address. You should go see him when you have time. I remembered what Lao Tang had told me on the phone before and felt a wave of frustration. You sure this guy is real, man? I asked quietly. You're not messing with me again, are you? Lao Tang clicked his tongue in annoyance. He grabbed a glass, filled it to the brim, and handed it to me. Don't worry, man. This master is the real deal. He can definitely help you out of this mess. I nodded. I'm a bit of a loner by nature. I mean, I can make small talk with my coworkers at the depot, but most of the time, I prefer being by myself. It always feels like those relationships are just surface level. Lao Tang is the only one I'd call a true friend. Maybe it's because we're similar in that way. Both of us have always been lone wolves. After that, we just sat there, drinking and eating, talking about whatever came to mind. We got more and more cheerful as the night went on, not stopping until 5 in the morning when we finally passed out. At 10 in the morning, the sound of my ridiculously catchy pop ringtone started echoing through my dream world. I answered the phone, my voice a hoarse croak. It was my third aunt from back home. Lee, you busy today? My third aunt is a classic busybody with a heart of gold. She's the type who'd give you the shirt off her back. If anyone in the village had a problem, you could bet she'd be the first one there to help. Ever since I went home for the new year and she found out I was still single, she's been beaming like she'd discovered a new charity case. In just a few months, she'd already set me up with 7 or 8 different girls. The problem was, she was never completely honest with them beforehand. She'd just say I had a stable city job. Then they'd meet me, find out I was a bus driver, and that would be the end of that. Right now, I was too hungover and exhausted to even think about that. What is it, Andy? I grumbled impatiently. I'm trying to sleep. If it's nothing important, I'm hanging up. Don't you hang up on me, you rascal. Listen, I found a really wonderful girl for you this time. I guarantee you'll like her the second you see her. I rolled over in bed. Auntie, I'm not interested, I said, my voice flat with exhaustion. I'm fine on my own. My aunt got agitated, her voice rising in pitch. What got into you, boy? You're the only one from our village in their 30s who isn't married yet. If you're not ashamed, I'm ashamed for you. This girl is fantastic. And don't worry, I told her what you do for a living, and she's totally fine with it. I've already set it all up. You two are meeting tonight at 6. I'll text you the address. My head was still fuzzy with sleep. I was about to say no and go back to bed, but she hung up before I could get a word in. A moment later, a text message came through. It's all set with the girl. Tonight, 6 o'clock at Kronos. The moment I saw Kronos, I was instantly half awake. It was one of the fanciest Western restaurants in the city. A dinner for 2 there would easily cost a couple $100, no question. Even though my aunt lives out in the country, she comes into the city to shop now and then. She must have walked by the place, seen how impressive it looked, and filed the name away for an occasion just like this. I put down my phone, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Sleep was impossible now. I got up, washed my face, and by the time I was done, it was already noon. After a quick lunch, I stormed over to Lao Wu's office. There was no way in hell I was driving the last bus on Route 13 again. On the very first night, I'd picked up 2 passengers who might not have even been human. If I kept driving that route, I was pretty sure I'd end up dead before I ever got a girlfriend. But as luck would have it, Lao Wu was out at a meeting in the city and wasn't expected back anytime soon. I thought about my 6 o'clock date. I didn't have high hopes for it, but it was at Kronos. I couldn't show up at a place that fancy looking like a bum. So, I went to a barber shop for a trim, then went back to my dorm to polish my leather shoes. By the time I was done getting ready, it It was almost time to go, so I headed for the restaurant. Kronos really lived up to its reputation as the best Western restaurant in town. Two doormen in crisp uniforms opened the door for me. Inside, a beautiful hostess in a chic blazer greeted me. When I told her I had a reservation, she gave me a knowing smile, as if she knew I was there for a blind date, and left with a nod. I glanced around at the upscale decor, mentally calculating if the $250 I had in my pocket would be enough to cover the bill. My eyes scanned the room and landed on the back of a girl with long hair sitting by a window. The restaurant was a single large room, and nearly every table was occupied by a couple. Hers was the only one with an empty seat. I took a deep breath, straightened my sleeves, and slowly walked over. I couldn't tell much from her back, but when I saw her from the front, I was stunned. She had delicate features, a graceful figure, and a pair of large, sparkling eyes. She was an absolute knockout. I couldn't believe my aunt had such good connections. I had no idea where she'd found this girl. She was so beautiful that I just stood there, staring like a fool. The girl looked a little surprised too. "Are you Liao?" she asked softly. I snapped out of it and nodded vigorously. I hurried to sit down, but maybe I moved too fast or the chair was too slick because my feet went out from under me and I landed right on the floor. The loud thud made everyone in the restaurant turn to look. I felt my face flush so hot you could have fried an egg on it. The girl was laughing so hard she was doubled over, but she came forward and helped me up. As I sat down again, I felt completely mortified. Making a fool of myself like that on the first impression, I'd already blown my chance. But I had to hand it to her. Not only was she gorgeous, she was also a genuinely nice person. She kept talking and laughing as if my embarrassing fall hadn't happened at all. After we introduced ourselves, I learned her name was Bai Fan, and she worked in HR for a private company in the city. But the part that made my jaw drop was that she lived in Miller's Creek, the very same village I'd just been to last night. We really hit it off and had a great conversation over dinner. When we finished, she checked the time and said, "Lee, my aunt told me you drive the last bus on Route 13. Since it's Friday night, I was thinking of heading home to see my family. I could just take your bus. What time do you leave?" Hearing this, I froze, not knowing what to say. My original plan was to never drive that bus again, even if they put a knife to my throat. But then a thought occurred to me. She wanted to take my bus home. Maybe she just wanted to spend more time with me. Maybe this was her giving me a signal. I hesitated for a moment, then gritted my teeth. What the hell, I thought. Fortune favors the bold. You don't get a chance with a girl like this every day. I'll do it. I'll drive the route one more time tonight. I nodded emphatically. Yeah, that's right. My last bus goes right back to your village. I leave at 11. I can give you a ride home. Bai Fan beamed, her smile revealing two cute dimples. I felt like my knees were about to give out. No matter how dangerous this trip was, it would be worth it. It was completely dark by the time we left the restaurant. Bai Fan and I walked around for a bit before grabbing a cab back to the bus depot. I went to my dorm to change into my work uniform. At 11 o'clock sharp, I pulled the Route 13 bus out of the depot. Bai Fan was, of course, my first passenger of the night. She sat in the second seat across from the driver's cabin, and we talked and laughed the whole way. I almost forgot about what had happened the night before. Along the route, we picked up a few groups of villagers heading home from the market. Then, a chill ran down my spine. The same old man from last night, the one with the white towel wrapped around his head, got on the bus again. The sight of him snapped me right back to reality. There's an old saying about how lust can be a deadly trap. I've been so focused on impressing this girl. What was I going to do on the return trip from the paper mill at midnight? The old man even nodded at me as he got on. Remembering what the old woman had said last night, I deliberately ignored him. But to my surprise, Bai Fan, sitting behind me, greeted him warmly. "Uncle Lou, were you in the city selling vegetables today?" "Oh, Bai Fan, it's you." The old man chuckled, seeming to be in a good mood. "Had more vegetables than we could eat, so I came to sell a few." He turned to me. "Hey son, got a light?" I finally let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. I remember the old woman from last night telling me the seat was empty, that I was talking to myself. She'd scare me half to death, making me think I'd seen a ghost. But Bai Fan saw him too. That meant the old man wasn't a ghost at all. The old woman had been lying. Recalling Lao Tang's words, a new thought chilled me. Maybe she was the one who wasn't human. The rest of the trip went smoothly. At the stroke of midnight, I pulled into the final stop at the old paper mill. As Bai Fan got off the bus, she gave me her phone number and told me to call her sometime. I was ecstatic. This trip might have been dangerous, but for a shot at happiness, it was totally worth it. On the return trip, my heart was in my throat. I kept dreading a repeat encounter with last night's old woman. But thankfully, the drive back was uneventful. Nothing unusual happened. At 1 in the morning, I finally made it back to the depot. I parked the bus and let out a long, slow breath. Even though the trip had been smooth, I'd been on high alert the entire time. I didn't realize until now that the back of my shirt was soaked with sweat. I got off the bus and was walking past the depot security gate when I saw Lao Wu staggering his way back. My anger, which had been simmering all day, instantly boiled over. I couldn't find him earlier, but now was the perfect time to settle the score. I quickened my pace and caught up to him. The reek of alcohol hit me like a wall, but I didn't care. I grabbed him by the shirt. "Lao Wu," I snarled. "What did I ever do to you? Why are you trying to get me killed?" Lao Wu jumped, startled by my sudden grab. When he saw it was me, he clutched his chest. "Lee, you scared the life out of me. What got into you? How am I trying to get you killed?" Route 13. The late-night shift was shut down 10 years ago after 3 different drivers and 3 busloads of passengers all had fatal accidents. You knew about that. Why would you stick me on such a cursed route? After I finished, Lao Wu looked genuinely shocked. "Kid," he whispered, "that was a decade ago. Besides me, nobody at this depot knows about that." "Who told you?" Seeing that he wasn't about to apologize, I grabbed him by the collar and hauled him forward. "Secrets get out, you old bastard. Lao Tang told me. Did you really think you could play me for a fool?" Surprise, surprise. But Lao Wu just stared at me with a confused look on his face. "Lao Tang? Who's Lao Tang? There's nobody named Tang at this depot." That made me even angrier. I knew Lao Tang was a quiet guy who kept to himself, but there was no way the depot supervisor wouldn't know him. I remembered asking Lao Tang his full name. "You don't know him?" I roared at Lao Wu. "Tang Xiansheng, stop playing dumb with me." The words were barely out of my mouth when, smack, Lao Wu slapped me hard across the face. It wasn't a light tap, either. The force of it sent my head spinning. "You son of a bitch." I cursed. "You dare hit me?" Lao Wu looked even angrier than I was. His eyes were wide as he jabbed a finger in my face and screamed, "Fuck you and your Tang Xiansheng. What kind of nonsense are you spouting? He was the first driver on Route 13 10 years ago, and he's been dead this whole goddamn time." The moment Old Wu finished speaking, I was completely floored. There was no mistake. Old Tang had told me his name was Tang Xiansheng himself. And now, Old Wu was telling me he was the very first Route 13 driver, and that he'd been dead for 10 years. Thinking back, in a year I'd been with the company, I'd never once seen Old Tang talk to any other colleague besides me. Whenever he was with me, it was always just the two of us. He never showed up for company meetings. Every time I asked, he'd just brush it off, saying he was a mechanic in logistics and didn't need to attend. Just last night, I was drinking with Old Tang until dawn. As the memories replayed in my mind, a terrifying thought crept in, and the hair on the back of my neck stood on end. Old Wu, seeing me frozen in place, finally spoke up after a long moment. "Hey kid, you're not making up some ghost story just to get out of this shift, are you?" I swallowed hard and asked him seriously. "Brother Wu, I'm not kidding. Was Tang Xiansheng really the first Route 13 driver, the one who died 10 years ago?" Old Wu sighed, lowered his head, and pulled a cigarette from his pocket, lighting it. "Little brother, 10 years ago, I wasn't a captain yet. Tang Xiansheng was a colleague on my team. His family was poor, and when the company first opened this route, nobody wanted to drive it. He volunteered, hoping to make some extra cash. But a month later, the accident happened. Everyone on the bus died. It was the biggest traffic accident of the year. How could I possibly forget something like that?" Hearing this, I was on the verge of a breakdown. Even though Old Wu had been drinking, I knew he wasn't making this up. I started to stammer. Brother Wu, I really can't drive Route 13 anymore. It's too cursed." Before I could finish, Old Wu cut me off. "Say no more, little Lee. It's my fault. I didn't have any bad intentions. I just saw you were the youngest on our team and thought your young energy might be strong enough to handle this route. All right, if you really don't want to do it, I'll put in a request with management tomorrow and try to hire an external driver." After saying this, Old Wu didn't seem to be in a good mood either. He stubbed out his cigarette and patted my shoulder. "Little brother, you don't look so good. I don't care if what you said about seeing Old Tang is true or not. Just take a couple of days off and rest up before coming back to work." I nodded without another word and turned to walk back to the dormitory. Old Wu called out a few more times behind me, but I didn't respond. At that moment, I really needed to clear my head. The man I thought was my best friend wasn't even human. In this world, besides hypocritical bosses and selfish colleagues, there was a 10-year-old ghost. I didn't have a single real friend. At this thought, I couldn't hold back the tears. I felt like such a pathetic person, and for a moment, the fear subsided a little. Back in my dorm room, I collapsed onto the bed like a zombie, without even the energy to take off my clothes or shoes. Staring at the 2 liquor glasses on the table, I let out a deep sigh. I don't know what I did in a past life to deserve this, I muttered. How did I get stuck with all this crap? Looking back on the events of the last few days, it was a bizarre enough collection of incidents to make a movie. If Old Tang was a ghost, then nothing he told me could be true. Why would he tell me about the bus accident from 10 years ago? And what about the old woman on the bus? He said the 3 drivers before me all met her before their accidents. What was he trying to tell me? The more I thought, the more I had to laugh bitterly. This ghost sure had a lot of time on his hands. If he wanted to kill someone, he could just get it over with. What was all this damn playing around for? Was he enjoying himself? Just as my mood was swinging wildly, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Bai Fan. Liao, did you make it back to the company safely? It was already 1:40 a.m. She must have stayed up worrying about me. This was definitely my most vulnerable moment. Seeing that message, I suddenly felt a wave of warmth. Maybe there was still some genuine kindness in this world after all. I sent a simple reply. Made it back safe? Get some sleep. After replying, I put my phone on the table, ready to sleep. As I did, I noticed a slip of paper tucked under the glass Old Tang had used last night. Curious, I sat up and unfolded it. An address was written neatly on the paper. Bayside District, 2386 Hartwell Road. Find Lu Qingzhu and ask for his help. I suddenly remembered. Last night, Old Tang had mentioned he knew a powerful master of Taoist arts and said he'd introduce me to him for protection. This Lu Qingzhu must be the master he was talking about. I crumpled the note into a ball and threw it into the nearby trash can, cursing under my breath. Fuck that. A ghost recommending a ghost hunter? Are you fucking kidding me? Even though I'd thrown the note away, the address was familiar. I thought to myself, 2386 Hartwell Road. Damn it, the license plate of my Route 13 bus is 2386. What kind of coincidence is that? My mind was a complete mess. I just wanted to sleep and not think about anything, but I tossed and turned, my head filled with thoughts of Old Tang. Before I knew it, the sky was starting to lighten. I sat on the edge of the bed, wanting a cigarette. Reaching into my pocket, I pulled out a crumpled piece of rolling paper. I unfolded it and read what was written on it. Young man, I can tell you've gotten mixed up with something unclean. I've ridden your bus twice, and you're the only driver who's ever let me smoke on board. You're a good kid. If you want to live, go to 2386 Hartwell Road tomorrow and find Old Lou. It was the kind of paper used for hand-rolled tobacco. From a message, it had to be from the old man who'd been smoking on my bus these past 2 nights. I'd always thought the old man didn't seem like a bad person, but after believing the old woman, I'd suspected he wasn't human. It was only when Bai Fan greeted him that I knew I'd misjudged him. Hartwell Road, 2386 again? What the hell is going on? Is this person even real? I muttered to myself. This whole thing was getting more and more complicated. They say an elder in the family is like a treasure. People who've lived a long time know things. If this old man could tell I'd run into something unclean, his words must be reliable, right? I lit my cigarette and thought it over carefully. In the end, I decided to trust the old man. I'd risk it. As soon as it was fully light out, I would go to 2386 Hartwell Road and meet this Lu Qingzhu. Human or ghost, I had to get to the bottom of this. With so much on my mind, I didn't feel tired at all, despite not sleeping a wink. At 6 o'clock, the sun was fully up. I washed my face, rushed out the door, grabbed a quick bite from a roadside stall, and headed straight for 2386 Hartwell Road. Hartwell Road was in the city's largest slum. The apartment complexes here were made up of ancient, soot-stained tenement buildings, nearly a century old, with crumbling facades and filthy courtyards. The residents were mostly migrant workers, with 7 or 8 people sometimes crammed into a single room of less than 100 square feet. An old man in a white tank top was sitting by the entrance to one of the complexes, his eyes squeezed shut. I walked over and asked, "Excuse me, sir. I'm looking for someone. Do you know a Lu Qingzhu in this complex?" The old man seemed hard of hearing. He didn't react at all, just kept his eyes closed and leisurely fanned himself. I raised my voice. "Sir, Lu Qingzhu, do you know him?" The old man's eyes snapped open. I was so startled I fell right on my butt. The man's eyes had no pupils. They were completely white. Just then, a woman in her 40s ran over. Seeing me on the ground, she quickly helped me up, smiling. "I'm so sorry. My dad's been blind for decades. I hope he didn't scare you. I shook my head and asked her, I'm here looking for someone named Lu Qingzhu. Do you know him? The woman clearly froze for a second when she heard the name, but she quickly recovered her composure and smiled. Oh, I know him. Lu Qingzhu lives in this complex. He's a fortune teller and ghost hunter. I bet you're here to ask for his help, right? Her words stunned me. I couldn't believe it. This Lu Qingzhu was actually the real deal. I nodded. Ma'am, where does he live? Could you show me the way? The woman slapped her thigh. Oh, what bad luck. I saw him leave this morning. Said he was going into the city to buy some things. He won't be back until tonight. I said. That's all right. I'll just come back later. The woman nodded at me, then turned and helped the blind old man up and into the complex. I went back to my dorm. I needed to confirm whether the old smoking man could be trusted, so I sent a text to Bai Fan. Bai Fan, can I ask you something? The old man you said hi to on my bus last night. I heard you call him Uncle Lou. Do you know him well? She replied a moment later. He's from Tang Creek Village, lives not far from my parents. He's known me since I was a kid. What? Reading her text, I finally let out a long sigh of relief. So, the old man was trustworthy. My plan was set. Tonight, I'd go see Lu Qingzhu, and the day after, I'd go to Tang Creek Village to talk to the old man properly. It seemed like he was the only one who could help me now. I waited for a while until it got dark, then hailed a cab to 2386 Hartwell Road. The area was remote, with no real entertainment to speak of. Even though it was only 7 p.m., the streets were already nearly empty. Arriving at the entrance to the complex again, I felt an oppressive atmosphere hanging over the place. I was about to walk in and ask for Lu Qingzhu's apartment when I suddenly noticed that the blind old man from this morning was still sitting by the gate. Only this time, his eyes were open. That's right. He was staring with those eyes that had no irises, just milky white orbs. The sky wasn't completely dark yet, and even though I was somewhat prepared, the sight sent a cold sweat running down my back. Just then, the woman from the morning appeared out of nowhere. She smiled when she saw me. You're here. Lu Qingzhu is back. Come on, I'll take you to him. I nodded, but something felt off about her. I couldn't put my finger on it, but her enthusiasm was unsettling. I followed her into the complex and through a small side door into the building. This place was really something else. The hallways were lit by dim, yellowing incandescent bulbs that barely illuminated the stairs. Trash was strewn everywhere, and a foul smell filled the air. I covered my mouth and followed behind her. I wanted to ask why no one ever cleaned up, but the woman just kept her head down, walking, and didn't seem interested in talking. We wound our way through the corridors up to the 8th floor. We stopped in front of a battered wooden door covered in flyers. Without turning around, the woman said coldly, We're here. This is Lu Qingzhu's place. You can go in. I have to get home. With that, she continued up the stairs. Just as I was about to knock, my phone buzzed. It was another text from Bai Fan. By the way, Uncle Lu called me this afternoon out of the blue. He wanted me to tell you that the old Lu you're looking for is named Lu Yunbua. He said to make sure you don't find the wrong person. I had just finished reading the message when, with a creak, the door to Lu Qingzhu's apartment swung open. The timing of that text message hit me like a ton of bricks. Crap, I got the wrong guy. The old Lu on the note was Lu Yunbua, not the Lu Qingzhu that old Tang mentioned. Just as I turned to leave, the dilapidated wooden door in front of me creaked open. Before I could even see who opened it, a hand shot out from inside and clamped down on my wrist like a vice. It was a withered, bloodless hand, like a dry twig. It looked like it would snap under the slightest pressure, yet its strength was immense. I struggled to pull away, but it just dragged me a few inches further inside. In a panic, thinking fast, I yelled, Old Tang sent me to get help for him. The person inside seemed to hear me and released my wrist. It had only been 10 seconds, but my wrist was already covered in dark bruises. I rubbed my wrist and was about to bolt when a raspy voice drifted from inside the doorway. You're young, but you've got a lot of filth clinging to you. Those words stopped me in my tracks. I hesitated, then slowly pulled back the foot I had just put forward. The wooden door swung fully open, revealing a stick-thin old man in tattered clothes, leaning on a staff and staring at me. Most of his hair was gone, leaving only 2 tufts of snow white at his temples. But what made my heart clench was his right eye. It was a solid, vibrant green. At a glance, it looked like a green gemstone embedded in a piece of deadwood. Ahem. The old man coughed twice, then looked up at me. This old Tang you mentioned, is he Tang Xiansheng? I don't know why, but I felt as if I were bound by some kind of spell. My whole body was stiff, unable to move. I nodded. Yes, He told me to find you to save him. I was deliberately twisting the truth. Old Tang wasn't human, so anyone he recommended couldn't be trusted. If I admitted I was the one who needed saving, I was afraid this old man would just eat me alive. Heth, heth, heth. The old man covered his mouth with his right hand and began to cackle. The sound echoed up and down the dim, decrepit hallway, sending a chill down my spine. You little punk, you're in deep trouble yourself, and you have the nerve to be running messages for him? I didn't know how to respond to that. Did he mean he was about to make his move? I subconsciously took 2 steps back. He continued, have you been running into a string of strange people lately? I almost wanted to laugh. You, with your goddamn green eye, are asking me if I've been meeting strange people? I thought, but of course I didn't dare say it out loud. I just grunted in agreement, my palms sweating. My mind wasn't on chatting with him. I was just trying to figure out how to get the hell out of there. Suddenly, an idea struck me. I sighed and said, Sir, Old Tang ran into someone powerful. He sent me to tell you that from now on. I'll be the messenger between you two. The old man paused. I saw his gemstone green eye twitch slightly. Come inside. I have something to show you. With that, he turned to go back into his apartment. The moment his back was turned, I cursed under my breath and bolted. As I rounded the corner of the stairwell, I heard him shout, Too many people, don't. The rest was lost as I scrambled down 8 flights of stairs with all the strength I had. The whole way down was pitch black. My clothes got snagged and torn in several places, but I couldn't care less. When I burst out of the building's entrance, I felt like I'd been reborn. I bent over, hands on my knees, gasping for air. Suddenly, a pair of hands slapped down on my shoulders from behind. Ah! I yelled, jumping away. I whipped around to see a short, heavy-set man. In the faint light from the doorway, I could just make out his face. He looked to be in his 50s, with thick eyebrows, large eyes, and an honest-looking face, but a scar ran through his right eyebrow, a memento of some past trouble. Seeing how startled I was, the man gave an embarrassed smile. Sorry, son. I saw you bent over like that and thought you were drunk and about to puke. I thought the old man had chased me out. Seeing this friendly-looking guy was a huge relief. It's okay, I said quietly. I was looking for someone, got the wrong person. Nearly scared me to death. Oh, the man said. I've lived here for over 10 years. Who are you looking for? Maybe I know them. Still catching my breath, I said, I'm looking for Mr. Lu Yunbua, an old master who catches ghosts. The man burst out laughing. Well, what a coincidence. I'm Lu Yunbua, but you got 2 things wrong. I'm not old, and I don't catch ghosts. Hearing that this was the very master Lu Yunbua I had risked my life to find, I almost jumped for joy. I quickly grabbed his hand. You have to help me. 6th uncle from Creekwood Village sent me to you. Lu Yunbua nodded. Oh, if 6th uncle sent you, then come inside and we'll talk. No matter how I looked at him, this short, stout, middle-aged man didn't seem to have any ghost-hunting skills. But with all the strange things happening, I had no other choice. I glanced timidly back toward the building in trance I just fled. Lu Yunbua seemed to notice my hesitation and offered a small smile. I'm here. Don't be afraid. Trembling, I followed Lu Yunbua back into that dark hallway, which felt like a demon's den. But seeing his broad shoulders and steady gait, I felt a sense of reassurance, and my fear began to subside. Lu Yunbua lived on the 3rd floor. His apartment was Spartan, containing nothing but a black and white photograph on the wall and a collection of old furniture. As soon as I sat down, I couldn't wait any longer. Master Lu, I know you're a man of great ability. I've been cursed by something unclean. You have to save me. I then recounted all the bizarre events of the past 2 days of my driving job, including my encounters with Old Tang and the mistaken identity of Lu Qingzhu. Lu Yunbua listened, looking me up and down, then slowly said, Have you ever heard the folklore about the ghosts of the drowned pulling others into the water to take their place? A drowned ghost seeking a replacement. I'd heard stories like that since I was a child. There was a large river not far from my home. Years ago, a girl who went to do her laundry by the river drowned. Ever since then, someone would drown in that same river every single year. The villagers all said that the souls of those who drown are trapped in the river and can only move on to reincarnation if they find a new soul to take their place. Lu Yunbua continued. The first driver and his busload of passengers went into the reservoir 10 years ago. I believe that was an accident. But the second driver and his passengers were pulled in as replacements by the first group. And the same thing happened with the third bus. Hearing this, it was like a light bulb went off in my head. I nodded quickly. That explains everything. Now I'm a fourth driver. Do you think it's too late for me to quit? Lu Yunbo shook his head, but didn't answer right away. My heart leaped into my throat. What? Is it too late? Am I doomed? He shifted his bulky frame, struggling to stand up from his chair. No, it's not that. It's that Yot-sant quit. You have to keep driving that bus. My greatest wish right now wasn't to win $5 million in the lottery, but just to go back to my old, peaceful, uneventful life, far, far away from the Route 13 last bus. Hearing that I had to keep driving felt like a massive, unmovable boulder had been placed on my chest. Let me put it this way, he said. You were the first one to drive that route after 10 years. It's like you formed a contract with Route 13. If you don't resolve this and just walk away, you won't be able to get out of it unscathed. I was dumbfounded. So I was basically bound to the Route 13 bus. Or maybe the ghosts from the third crash were pinning all their hopes on me. I asked hastily, isn't there any other way? Lu Yunbo turned and went into his bedroom. A moment later, he came out holding a bracelet made of solid black beads and handed it to me. This bracelet will keep you safe for a while. You must remember to wear it every time you go out on your route. And come find me after your shift on the 15th of this lunar month. Before I could say anything else, Lu Yunbo waved his hand. All right, you should go. It's not good to stay here too long. Although I still had a million questions, I didn't want to annoy him, so I didn't dare ask more. I gave him a deep bow, pocketed the bracelet, and took my leave. Once I was out of the apartment complex, I carefully examined my life-saving treasure. The IT was a plain, unassuming bracelet, just a dozen or so jet black beads strung together. I couldn't tell what material they were made of. It didn't feel like wood, and it certainly wasn't jade. It was already 9:30 p.m. when I got back to the dorm. I really didn't want to go out on the route, but remembering Master Lu Yunbo's instructions, I steeled myself and went downstairs that I slipped the bracelet onto my wrist. Every few minutes, I'd glance down at it, terrified of losing my precious lifeline. At 11 p.m. sharp, I drove the Route 13 bus out of the station, as usual. Just like any other night, the villagers boarded one by one, chatting and laughing. I was hoping to see Sixth Uncle to tell him what happened today, but as luck would have it, he wasn't on the bus tonight. I've been needing to pee since before I left. After safely reaching the paper mill and letting all the villagers off, I quickly pulled over to relieve myself by the side of the road. The rural dirt road was pitch black and full of potholes. As I was getting back on the bus, I tripped and took a nasty fall. I muttered to myself that the old saying was true. When you're down on your luck, you can't even walk without tripping down the way back to the station. My mind was racing with what Master Lu Yunbo had told me. In a blink of an eye, I was at the reservoir. Caught in the headlights, I suddenly saw a figure standing in the middle of the road. A cold sweat broke out over my body as I slammed on the brakes. Luckily, I stopped in time to avoid hitting the person. I was catching my breath, about to let out a stream of curses, when I glanced down and noticed my right wrist was bare. The black bead bracelet was gone. I had put on my wrist. How could it be gone? I slapped my forehead. Shit, it must have fallen off when I tripped getting back on the bus. As a feeling of dread crept over me, I looked back at the road ahead, and every hair on my body stood on end. The person standing in front of the bus was none other than the first driver of Route 13, Old Tang, who had been dead for 10 years. I'd always considered Old Tang my best friend, but seeing him now, all I felt was a mix of terror and, even more so, rage. I had truly and sincerely treated him as a brother, only to be played for a fool by this old ghost. When he saw my bus stop, Old Tang ran over, panting, and knocked on the window, telling me to open the door. I just screamed at him, "Stop fucking with me." I slammed my foot on the gas, but strangely, the engine wouldn't rev. Seeing that I was trying to leave, Old Tang's eyes bulged as if he wanted to tear me limb from limb. He pounded on the window even harder. No matter what I did in the driver's seat, the bus wouldn't budge an inch. He must have pulled some kind of trick, I thought. If you have that kind of power, why bother knocking on a damn window? You could just float right in. Even in a time like this, Old Tang was still putting on an act. Dejected, I lowered my head, thinking my life was probably over tonight. I bent down to grab the tire iron from under the seat, ready to go down fighting against this shameless old ghost. As I looked down, I saw a string of black beads under the gear shift. That's right, it was the black bead bracelet Master Lu Yunbo had given me. I was overjoyed. It hadn't been lost after all. It must have been shaken loose when I slammed on the brakes and shifted gears in a hurry. And no wonder Old Tang didn't just float right in. The bracelet must have been nearby, keeping him in check. With this thought, I watched Old Tang, still pretending to knock on the window, and decided to open the door for him. The moment the door opened, he got on and started yelling. "What the hell is wrong with you? Not only did you not open the door, but you tried to floor it and run when you saw me. I slipped the bracelet onto my wrist, and a sense of confidence finally settled in me. Seeing Old Tang's face, still pretending to be angry, his committed performance just made me sick to my stomach. Hey, buddy, I was just scared out of my wits. But seriously, I haven't seen you in a few days. What are you doing out here in the middle of the night? Old Tang sat down across from me, a look of profound grievance forming on his face. I got a big mouth, he said. I told you a little too much the other day and stirred up some trouble. I went to Crawford Creek yesterday to investigate. And guess what? I found out that in the first car accident 10 years ago, there really was an old man who died who liked to wrap a white towel around his head, just like the one you picked up. The villagers all called him Sixth Uncle. I didn't dare spend the night in the village, so I had to run out after dark. Hearing this, I wanted to smash him with a tire iron. You died 10 years ago yourself, you son of a bitch, and now you're telling me it was Sixth Uncle who died back then. I thought that I muttered under my breath, keep spinning your bullshit. Old Tang seemed to hear me, his eyes widening again. What? You don't believe me? You should stop driving this late-night route as soon as you can. I understood what he was doing. He was trying to warn me, to get me not to believe anything Sixth Uncle said. But what he didn't expect was that Oldwood had already told me that he, Tang, was long dead. I had no patience to bullshit with him any longer. I got out of the bus to check the engine. It turned out the emergency brake had busted an air valve. After replacing the part, I started the bus again. Old Tang was silent for the rest of the trip. It wasn't until we were almost back at the company depot that he finally spoke. Brother, I told you to go find Lu Qingzhu. Did you go? The moment I heard the name Lu Qingzhu, my anger flared up. Still acting. I had nearly gotten myself killed in there, and now he was asking if I went? I went. He didn't say much, just told me something about many people. I couldn't hear the rest clearly. Anyway, he seemed to be in trouble and asked me to save him. I secretly praised my own cleverness, thinking I could play both sides and confuse the hell out of these two things. Old Tang nodded. To be honest with you, 2386 Northwood Avenue is a notoriously haunted place. It's an old, dilapidated apartment complex with no real fire safety measures. 10 years ago, a fire at night burned down half the building, killing everyone inside. I believed him on that part. I'd seen the complex before. The walls were peeling and blackened, looking like it really had a history of fire. But what I was even more sure of was that Lu Qingzhu had likely died in that fire 10 years ago. And now these two old ghosts from a decade past had teamed up, pointing fingers and calling others ghosts. The nerve was unbelievable. Of course, Old Tang had no idea what I was thinking. He continued, there was another old man, also named Lu, who burned to death in his apartment in that building 10 years ago. That old man was a malicious person when he was alive, and he didn't rest easy after death. Lu Qingzhu only stayed there to keep an eye on that old ghost. He's been living there for 10 years. I glanced down at the black bracelet on my wrist. Just as I'd suspected, Old Tang must have seen me wearing the bracelet and started doing everything he could to slander others and make himself look good. I let out a long, feigned "oh" of surprise and played along. Hey, Old Tang, you should hurry back to work at the depot. It's pretty boring without you. Brother, I can't really go back to the company for a while. You take care of yourself. I'll contact you if anything comes up. This was also completely within my expectations. He knew as well as I did that if he went back now, he'd be exposed. I nodded. By this time, the bus had finally made it back into the city. A short distance from the depot, Old Tang hastily got off. Back in my dorm, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. I couldn't believe Old Tang had suddenly reappeared after being gone for days. I clutched the precious bracelet in my hand, thinking that I couldn't let it get lost no matter what. I don't know when, but I eventually drifted into a hazy sleep. The next morning, my cousin, a third year at the medical school in the next city, called. He said he was visiting our city with some classmates and had the afternoon free to come see me. Although we weren't super close growing up, we were still family. Besides, he was Third Aunt's son, and Third Aunt had just introduced me to my fan. For such a huge favor, I had to treat him well. I booked a table at a hot pot restaurant near the depot early. At 2 in the afternoon, my cousin arrived carrying 2 bags of fruit. The kid was handsome, tall, and well-built. I was so envious. In a society that judges by appearances, I thought if I had even a fraction of my cousin's looks, people would look at me with more respect, even if I was just a bus driver. My cousin was happy to see me. After some simple pleasantries, he started asking if I had any interesting stories from driving a bus and meeting so many people all day that I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Interesting stories? Not really, but there had been plenty to cry about lately. Still, my cousin was just a kid. It was better not to tell him about these things. He ate with gusto. As I was picking up some food, he noticed the bracelet on my wrist and said with a smile, "Hey cousin, did your girlfriend give you that bracelet?" I shook my head. "No, a friend gave it to me." Curious, my cousin grabbed my hand to get a closer look, rubbing the bracelet. "Cousin, the material of this bracelet is so weird," he said, puzzled. "It's not wood, and it doesn't look like jade or anything." I grunted in agreement and tried to pull my hand back. This bracelet was my lifeline. I was afraid he'd damage it just by looking at it. But my cousin seemed even more intrigued. He held onto my wrist, put down his chopsticks, and examined it more carefully, even sniffing it. He looked at me, shocked. "Cousin, I'm a medical student. I participate in anatomical dissections all the time. I'm not kidding, but these black beads, why do they look like they're made from human eyeballs?" His words came out of nowhere, sending a chill down my spine that I yanked my hand back and grumbled, "We're eating. What the hell are you talking about?" My cousin immediately smiled sheepishly. "Yeah, I just thought the texture feels a lot like the eyeballs I've handled in dissection class. But human eyeballs start to rot after about half a month in the open air. You've probably been wearing this bracelet for a long time, so it definitely can't be that." Hearing my cousin's words, my mind was suddenly in turmoil that I wouldn't dare forget a single word Master Lu Yunbo had said. I remembered clearly that when he gave me the bracelet, he instructed me to visit him on the 15th of this month, and today was the first day of the lunar month. From the 1st to the 15th is exactly half a month. His words came out of nowhere. Even though I knew he was just joking, it still put me on edge. I'd spoken with Master Lu Yunbo before, and he was definitely trustworthy. Maybe the fact that our timelines overlapped for half a month was just a coincidence. Seeing the grave look on my face, my cousin burst out laughing. "Ah, bro, you can't be serious. A simple joke scared you that much? You've been watching too many of those cannibal slasher flicks, haven't you?" I snapped out of it and let out a breath, saying impatiently, "Cut the crap and just eat your food." Seeing I was genuinely angry, my cousin didn't dare joke around anymore. He'd planned for us to hang out at my dorm after the meal, but the mood was ruined. Neither of us was interested anymore, so we went our separate ways. Back at the company, I headed straight for Old Wu's office. I had already told him I was quitting, and he had agreed to hire a new driver. But now that Master Lu wanted me to keep driving, I had no choice but to tough it out, even if I had a million reasons not to. Unfortunately, that busybody Old Wu was out again. Although his title was just captain, which sounded like a petty official, the big boss of the parent company wore too many hats and had no time to manage our little branch. So, Old Wu was basically the second in command here, wielding unquestionable authority. With nothing to do after leaving his office, I realized I'd been so focused on saving my own skin these past few days that I'd completely forgotten about my goddess by fan from the blind date. Seeing that it was still early, I sent her a text. "Are you busy? I'm near your work. Want to get dinner after you get off?" By fan replied quickly, "See you at the entrance at 5:30. I was overjoyed that she hadn't turned me down. It meant she hadn't forgotten about me. I rushed back to my dorm to polish my leather shoes and change clothes for our second date tonight. At 5:30, I stood ramrod straight downstairs from her company building, waiting for her. I was wearing the suit I'd bought last year to be a groomsman, complete with a brand new tie. It was a high-end office building, filled with white-collar elites. I figured Bai Fan had asked me to wait at the entrance, and if she ran into any colleagues, I didn't want to make her lose face. At the very least, I couldn't let anyone know I was a bus driver. A goddess is a goddess. Even in a bustling crowd, her light couldn't be dimmed. I recognized her instantly. Unlike our first meeting, today she was wearing a white blouse and a professional skirt, exuding an air of sharp, competent charm. She quickly noticed me too and gave a little wave. Watching her walk towards me from a distance, I was utterly captivated. A girl this wonderful was someone you only saw on TV or in dreams. Thinking about my recent troubles, I couldn't help but recall the old saying, "Good fortune can hide disaster, and disaster can hide good fortune." When Bai Fan reached me, she let out a snort of laughter. "Did you just get out of a meeting?" Confused, I shook my head. "No, if you weren't in a meeting, aren't you hot dressed in all those layers? It's almost 100 degrees today." Honestly, I hadn't noticed until she said something, but now I realized I was indeed hot. Beads of sweat were already dotting my forehead. This time, I had brought 5,000 in cash, which made my pockets bulge. I had originally planned to take her to a fancy restaurant called A Moment in Time, but she insisted it was too expensive and refused to go. In the end, she dragged me into a small noodle shop. I'm not a great talker, so when she was quiet, I didn't know what to say. The atmosphere grew a little awkward, and she kept trying to find topics to talk about. By the way, what Sixth Uncle said on the phone the other day was so confusing. How do you know him? And who did he tell you to find? I've been under a lot of stress these past few days and desperately wanted to vent to someone. Even if they couldn't offer any advice, it would be better than bottling it all up. Fan seemed like a kind and understanding person. I knew that if I told her, she wouldn't get annoyed. She would listen seriously, no matter how unbelievable the story sounded. But this wasn't exactly a pleasant topic. Girls tend to be easily scared, and I didn't need to burden her with my problems. Oh, it's nothing. Sixth Uncle is a regular on my bus, so we know each other. I asked him for a favor a few days ago. Fan just said, oh, while eating her noodles and didn't press further. After dinner, I want to take her to a movie. To my surprise, the girl actually wanted to see the new horror film that just came out. Naturally, I was 1,000,000% against it. I was already one step away from seeing ghosts every day. Just hearing the word ghost made me shiver. But I couldn't win against her, and we ended up in the theater. I couldn't freaking believe it. I remembered that domestic horror movies were always god-awful. Besides using cheap sound effects to startle people, they were basically at the level of a cartoon, the kind that could put you to sleep. But the horror movie we watched tonight had a suspenseful plot and gory scenes. The worst part was the sudden jump scares. It was already a hot summer night. To maintain my image, I was wearing a buttoned-up shirt and a tie under a heavy suit jacket. The sweat on my head was streaming down like a waterfall. By the time the movie finally ended, I looked like I had just stepped out of a steam sauna. Water was pouring off my head from all directions. As we were leaving, I overheard a young couple behind me whispering, "Honey, look at that guy. His head is soaked with sweat from being so scared. I bet he pissed his pants, too. He. Ha ha, he. What a wuss." The couple kept laughing, having the time of their lives. I don't know if Fan heard them, but I heard every word crystal clear. If she hadn't been there, and if I wasn't trying to maintain a civilized image, my short temper would have had me turning around and kicking both of them into next week. I suppressed my anger and snuck a glance at Fan beside me. She seemed not to have heard, looking down at her phone nonchalantly. All in all, the date was a success. Fan might not have been scared enough to jump into my arms, but at least I wasn't scared enough to jump into hers. That was good enough for me. I was satisfied. The first thing I did when I got back to the dorm was strip naked and take a cold shower. I changed into my work uniform, put on the bracelet, and got everything ready. At exactly 11 p.m., I drove the Route 13 bus out of the depot on time, beginning tonight's late-night shift. To my delight, Sixth Uncle was taking the bus back to the village tonight. I owed my life to that life-saving note he gave me. Seeing him this time felt like seeing family. I grinned and said, "Sixth Uncle, want to smoke? Light one up if you do. You can smoke in any seat you want." Sixth Uncle didn't stand on ceremony with me. He chuckled, took out his big pipe, lit it, and took a puff. "Kid, have you met old Lou?" "I have." "Look, Sixth Uncle, this bracelet I'm wearing was a gift from Master Lou." I held up my arm and shook the bracelet on my wrist. "Good. Old Lou gets things done." I remember the notes Sixth Uncle had given me and took the opportunity to ask, "Sixth Uncle, I bet you have some skills yourself. You could tell I got 'em mixed up with something unclean, couldn't you?" "I wouldn't say skills. I'm just old and I've seen a lot," Sixth Uncle said with a smile, taking another puff. He was clearly pleased by my compliment. I chatted a lot with Sixth Uncle on the way back to the village, and I made sure to tell him in detail about Old Tang's sudden appearance last night. Sixth Uncle had truly seen the world. Despite all these tales of ghosts and men, he remained perfectly calm, not even raising an eyebrow. "I know that Old Tang, and I know the Lu Qingzhu he told you to find." "Sixth Uncle, you know both of them?" Hearing this, Sixth Uncle cursed at me. "You silly kid, they aren't even human. How could I know them?" I realized I'd misspoken and gave an embarrassed laugh. "That Lu Qingzhu, he lived in the same complex as the Lu Yunhua I sent you to. 10 years ago, there was a big fire there. A lot of people died. Lu Qingzhu was one of the ones who burned to death." His words sounded very familiar. That was right. It was exactly what Old Tang had told me last night. The only difference was that Old Tang had said Lu Yunhua died in that fire, while Sixth Uncle was saying the one who died was Lu Qingzhu. Of course, between the two, I trusted Sixth Uncle more. I believed it was Lu Qingzhu who died in the fire all those years ago. After all, Sixth Uncle and Master Lu Yunhua were helping me, and I had already confirmed with Old Wu that Old Tang was dead. But I still had some doubts. "Sixth Uncle, Why do you think this old Tang is so fixated on me? What's he after, playing all these ghostly games for so long? We were approaching the stop. Sixth uncle tapped his pipe on the window frame to empty it and said slowly, "You go to the main office building in your company's compound often, right?" I nodded. "Yeah, almost every day." "Why sixth uncle?" "Behind that office building, there's a small, abandoned two-story building. Do you know about it?" "I do. I heard it's been abandoned for over 10 years. It takes up a lot of space. I have no idea why they haven't torn it down." Sixth uncle's eyes lit up, and he said in a low voice, "That small, abandoned building, that was your company's office building 10 years ago. On the second floor, the last room on the east end is in records room. Old Tang's secret is all in that room." Just as he finished speaking, I pulled the bus into the stop. I wanted to ask more, but sixth uncle had already stood up, shouldered his carrying pole, and gotten off the bus without another word. I was left with a lot of questions. I had no idea who sixth uncle was, yet he knew the layout of our company compound like the back of his hand. What was even more surprising was that he could so clearly describe the location of a specific room inside that abandoned building. That small two-story building was behind the main one, and no one ever went back there. I had only wandered over to look at it once out of curiosity when I first started at the company. According to my colleagues, it really was the original office building. The company built the new one in front of it after they made some money. Old Tang's secret is in the small two-story building. I kept mulling over sixth uncle's words on the drive back to the depot. What secret could Old Tang have? Wasn't it just that he died along with a bus full of people in an accident 10 years ago? In the records room, sixth uncle mentioned, the building has been deserted for a decade. Could there really be anything left in there? It started to rain heavily on the way back. After parking the bus, I ran through the rain to the security booth to grab an umbrella. The light was on in the booth, but it was empty. I had no idea where the guard had gone. I took an umbrella and strolled through the company compound. Come to think of it, there was no one around now, not even the security guard. It was the perfect opportunity to check out the small two-story building. Steeling myself, I turned, went around the main building, and walked towards the old one. I hadn't paid much attention to it before. The building had been abandoned for a decade, and I expected to see broken windows and rotting wood. But the windows of the building before me were all barred with iron strips. From a distance, it looked more like an old prison. The main door of the building was open. I switched my phone to flashlight mode and, using the faint light, slipped inside cautiously. The hallway was not only terrifyingly dark, but also eerily quiet. Most of the rooms on either side had their doors open, but strangely, they were all completely empty. The company has so much junk and spare parts. Some of it is just piled up in the yard. This building is so spacious. Why don't they use it for storage? As I was wondering about this, I heard footsteps. Startled, I quickly ducked into one of the rooms. Thump, 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 thump. The sound was coming from the second floor, getting closer. Slowly, I then heard the rattling of a heavy chain. My heart sank. Crap, someone locked the main door. Hearing the sound of the door being locked, I couldn't help but curse under my breath. The person locking up suddenly stopped. An endless silence followed. I couldn't hear the thud of his footsteps or even the sound of his breathing. The dark room, the long hallway, we were locked in a silent standoff. The quietness was unnerving. It made me long for more noise, even the sound of the lock turning. This dead silence was terrifying. I didn't dare to breathe. I had the chilling feeling that a pair of eyes was watching me from somewhere I couldn't see. After about 5 or 6 minutes, I finally heard the click of the lock being fully engaged. Then came a steady thump, thump, thump. The heavy sound of leather shoes on the floor grew closer. I held my breath, afraid to move an inch. Sweat soaked my hair as if I'd been caught in a downpour. The footsteps finally stopped right in front of the door to the room where I was hiding. Even though I wasn't a thief and could have walked out of there openly, my sixth sense screamed that this person was not friendly. It was best to stay unseen. It reminded me of a scene from Saw. You know, those psychos who like to hide out in remote, abandoned buildings, waiting for their prey to walk into a trap before brutally murdering and dismembering them. Thank God, the person didn't linger in front of my door for long. He dragged his feet up the stairs. This time, I didn't let my guard down. Only after I was certain he was long gone did I let out a long sigh of relief. I wondered to myself, this dilapidated building is completely empty, not even a speck of dust left. Why would they need a dedicated night watchman? There could only be one answer. There was something important on the second floor. Sixth uncle had told me that Old Tang's secret was hidden on the second floor. His words had stunned me. Old Tang died in a car accident 10 years ago. That was undisputed. It wasn't a homicide, so there was no complex evidence for a killer to fabricate. What kind of secret could he possibly have? The only thing that struck me as odd was that Old Tang's ghost wasn't haunting anyone else. He was fixated on me, even spinning all kinds of stories to introduce me to another ghost who had also been dead for 10 years. I figured these strange actions of Old Tang's must be the secret sixth uncle was talking about. Now the front door was locked, and there was a strange person on the second floor. There was no way I was getting out tonight. It looked like I'd have to tough it out in this rundown room for the night. I sat down by the window. It was still raining outside, and the light was dim. I sighed about to curse, but I bit the words back. Oh, this is life. So often, you're filled with a misery you can't share with anyone. Listening to the pitter-patter of the rain, I gradually grew drowsy and fell into a dream. In my dream, I was drowning in a boundless ocean. A small boat floated nearby, with two people standing on it. I struggled desperately in the water, screaming for help, but no matter how hard I yelled, the two on the boat just watched me with cold indifference. I strained to see their faces, but it was as if some invisible barrier stood between us. Thankfully, in the final moment before I sank beneath the waves, I finally saw them clearly. The two people on the boat were Old Tang and Sixth Uncle. I jolted awake, gasping for air. Sometime during the night, the rain outside had stopped. This dream was more terrifying than seeing 100,000 demons. Old Tang and Sixth Uncle, together? The person I feared most and the person I trusted most were in the same boat. What the hell kind of dream was that? Furious, I slapped myself hard across the face. The smack was piercingly loud in the silent building. I snapped back to my senses. I must have been sleep-addled. There was still something or someone upstairs. Yes, after everything that had happened, I couldn't be sure if anyone around me was actually human anymore. I got to my feet stealthily and pulled out my phone to check the time. It was 3:10 a.m. The sky was just beginning to lighten, and visibility inside the building had improved considerably. Just as I was about to curl up in the corner again, a series of snores echoed from somewhere on the second floor. In this quiet building, the snoring seemed to pass through the walls without any obstruction. Hearing those deep, sound snores, any sleepiness I had vanished. Instead, a bold idea formed in my mind. The person upstairs was fast asleep. This was the perfect chance to go up and investigate. Sixth Uncle's words replayed in my mind. Old Tang's secret is in the archive room on the second floor. I clenched my fists. I was already inside and couldn't get out anyway. An opportunity like this wouldn't come again. I steeled myself and stepped out of the room. The second floor was even more dilapidated than I had imagined. Using the faint light from my phone, I scanned my surroundings and felt a wave of nausea. The floor was littered with trash, discarded shoes, wine bottles, and plastic. The smell was horrendous. As I walked, I suddenly stepped on something soft. I quickly pulled my foot back and looked down, nearly vomiting my guts out. I had stepped on the carcass of a cat, dead for a long time and in an advanced state of decay. Maggots writhed all over it, feasting. My step had mashed the maggots and rotten flesh together. It was utterly disgusting. I quickly shook my foot, trying to fling off the bits of rotten flesh clinging to my shoe, which inevitably made some noise. Suddenly, the snoring that had been echoing through the hallway stopped. My foot was still in midair, but I was frozen, too scared to move. After another 2 or 3 minutes, the snoring started up again. I silently breathed a sigh of relief, my heart pounding, and slowly lowered my leg, which was already aching. Then, with movements that were almost a shuffle, I crept toward the archive room at the far east end of the corridor. The closer I got, the stronger a pungent, foul stench became. I watched my step carefully, terrified of stepping on another dead cat or dog. When I reached the room at the very end, the snoring was so loud it was as if it were right next to my ear. Just as I suspected, the man who locked the building lived in the room directly opposite the archives. His door was ajar, and the inside was pitch black, without a glimmer of light. The archive room was different from the others. It had a massive padlock on the door, and even the windows were barred with iron strips. This only piqued my curiosity more. The building had been abandoned for 10 years, yet this was the only room in the entire place that was locked. There was no doubt about it. Something was hidden inside. I stood on my toes, trying to use my phone's light to peek through the window and see what was inside. Just as I raised my head to look, a loud bang came from the room across the hall. I jumped, my whole body trembling, and my phone slipped from my hand, clattering to the floor. Forgetting the phone, I scrambled into an adjacent room to hide. A moment later, I heard the man in the room shout, "Son of a bitch!" I was sleeping so soundly. Almost killed myself with that fall. I finally let out a breath of relief. The loud bang had just been him rolling off the bed in his sleep. But my phone was still on the floor by his doorway. As I was trying to figure out how to retrieve it, I suddenly heard a piercing ringtone. My heart sank. A phone call at a time like this? I was screwed. "Hello. Yeah, it's here with me." "Okay, I'll bring it over to you now." It turned out to be his phone that was ringing. I wiped the sweat from my forehead and sighed inwardly. I was so on edge, I'd completely forgotten my ringtone is "Call Me Maybe." Then, the man pushed his door open, and a powerful, foul stench wafted out. I covered my nose and mouth. This guy really was like a killer from the movies. I couldn't help but wonder what was causing that reek in his room. Could it be the dismembered pieces of his victims? The archive room was locked, and the windows were barred. I hadn't come prepared today, so there was no way I was getting in. With this weirdo heading out, it was the perfect opportunity for me to slip away. With that thought, I grabbed my phone and followed him from a distance, just hoping he didn't have a habit of locking the main door behind him for a short trip. Thank God. He unlocked the chain on the ground floor gate, but didn't lock it again. I waited until he had been gone for a bit before darting out from the corner of the staircase. But just as I slipped out of the small building, the man suddenly stopped. I quickly hid behind a tree in the courtyard. He must have remembered he hadn't locked the door, because he turned around to look back, worried. That one glance was all it took. I was so shocked I nearly cried out. "Old Woo!" I got back to my dorm, chugged half a bottle of whiskey in one go, and collapsed onto my bed, my mind a complete mess. Old Woo was the second in command of the transport team, a man with real power. He wasn't short on cash, so why was he living in this old building that had been abandoned for a decade? And why, of all places, was he living in the room right across from the archives? And what about that foul stench coming from his room? The irony of it all hit me. I've been with the transport team for over a year. First, I discovered my best friend, Old Tang, was a ghost who had been dead for 10 years. Now, even my direct supervisor, Old Woo, was tangled up in this. And the most terrifying part? I couldn't even be sure if he was human or a ghost anymore. What is wrong with me? How'd I get mixed up in all this? Do other people's colleagues and bosses turn out to be ghosts too? I was so damn tired, but I had no choice but to see this through to the end. Because Master Lu Yunbo had told me, until this is resolved, I have to keep driving the last bus on Route 13. I touched the bracelet on my wrist. In half a month, I would see Master Lu Yunbo again. I had to beg him to find a way, any way, to get me out of this company. I honestly didn't know anymore. Lu Sheng, Fatty, the guys I saw every day, were they human or ghosts? At this point, I didn't trust anyone. When morning came, I mustered my courage and went to Old Woo's office. He was sitting in his chair, just like any other day, leisurely sipping tea and listening to the radio. Old Woo didn't show any strange reaction when he saw me, which was a relief. I was certain he hadn't seen me last night. Seeing me, Old Woo turned off the radio and said with a smile, "What's up, Lee? Still worried about your situation? Don't be. I've got all the paperwork ready. I'll head to the city later to register you as a contract driver." I shook my head. "No need, Woo. I'll keep driving the bus for now. We can talk about it later." Old Woo looked confused and was about to say something when the gatekeeper knocked and came in. He said to me, "Lee, someone's at the gate for you. They've been waiting for a while." I didn't want to talk to Old Woo any longer anyway, so I used it as the perfect excuse to leave. On my way to the gate, my mind kept replaying the events of last night. The dead cat, the foul stench, and that locked archive room. When I reached the gate, I glanced outside casually, and my eyes snapped wide open. The person looking for me was the old woman from my first night on the job, the one who had left her basket of vegetables on my bus. My heart tightened when I saw the old woman. I remembered what Old Tang had told me. She had appeared right before each of the 3 drivers had their accidents. Old Tang was a ghost. So what did that make her? Aside from the unusually deep wrinkles on her face, she looked no different from any other elderly woman. But she was, after all, one of the first passengers on my late-night route. I still remembered that night she told me I was talking to an empty seat, nearly scaring the soul out of me. The memory was seared into my mind. The old woman was hunched over. Seeing me frozen in the doorway, she shot me a glare and yelled, "What are you spacing out for? Is your head still not screwed on right, kid? You should get that checked out." I forced an awkward smile and subconsciously took a step back. "Ma'am," I said softly, "can I help you with something?" The old woman noticed my retreat and was clearly displeased. She turned her head away, her voice dripping with resentment. Don't you remember me? Can't you recognize someone who's trying to help, boy? My temper flared at her words. Because of one thing she said, I'd almost mistaken sixth uncle for a ghost. And now, not only had I not gone to settle the score with her, she had the nerve to show up at my door, acting all high and mighty. Ma'am, let's not get into whether you're a good person or not. Is your eyesight starting to go too? That got her riled up. She bent down and picked up a potato from the vegetable basket on the floor. Her movements were slow, and I saw the potato in her hand, but I never in a million years expected her to throw it at me. Smack! A fist-sized potato cracked right against my skull. I clutched my head, tears of pain welling in my eyes. I yelled, furious, "What the hell? You crazy old lady! Why are you hitting people?" The old woman picked up her basket, tilting her head back haughtily. "That's to teach a naive little kid like you to stop spouting nonsense." I was so furious I could feel my muscles tense up, but what could I do against a 60 or 70-year-old woman? Seeing me clutching my head in silence, the old woman spoke again, her voice low. "A little potato to knock some sense into you. I'm here to save you today. On the 15th of this month, don't go to work. Hide in your room, and don't come out even if the sky falls." Got it. I'm usually a quiet guy, but I'm definitely not the type to just take a beating. What I hate most is this kind of thing, smacking you in the face and then offer you a piece of candy, telling me it's for my own good. For my own good, my ass. I shot back impatiently. You just split my head open, and now you're telling me you're saving me? Are you going senile? Hearing this, the old woman's brow furrowed. She bent down, grabbed another potato, and threw it while cursing. "You little brat. Better to get a bloody crack on the head than to lose it completely." I saw her winding up with another potato and quickly stumbled back a few steps. I was ready this time and dodged it easily. Having thrown 2 potatoes, the old woman seemed to lose interest. She picked up her basket, turned, and slowly walked away, muttering under her breath, "Insolent child." I'm not bothering anymore. Once she was a good distance away, I spat on the ground and quickly hailed a cab to a nearby clinic. When the doctor asked what happened, I just said I fell off my motorcycle. On the way back to the dorm, I ran into a few coworkers. Seeing the bandage on my head, they all started asking after me with fake concern. I mostly ignored them and kept walking. Those crafty old-timers have mastered the art of being smooth-talking and superficial. Behind my back, who knows what kind of jokes they're cracking at my expense. That old woman was so strange. She came all this way just to crack my head open and leave, and telling me not to go out on the night of the 15th. How could I not? Master Lu Yunbo specifically told me to go see him after my late shift on the 15th. I touched the bracelet on my wrist and felt a wave of calm. A bold thought occurred to me. Maybe, just like old Tang, she wished me ill but was wary of this bracelet and didn't dare make a move against me. Otherwise, why would the 2 of them, after being gone for so long, suddenly reappear out of nowhere? This recent string of events had completely ruined my sleep. Back in my dorm, I lay on my bed, wanting to get some rest, but I couldn't stop my mind from trying to sort through the complexities of the past few days. It started with the old woman. She said sixth uncle didn't exist, which meant sixth uncle was a ghost. Then old Tang said the old woman had strangely appeared at the scene of a car accident 10 years ago, which could mean she was a ghost too. Later, old Tang told me that Lu Yunbo had been burned to death 10 years ago and was a ghost. Similarly, sixth uncle told me the one who burned to death 10 years ago was Lu Qingtong. It was obvious now. Old Tang and Lu Qingtong were on one side. Sixth uncle and Lu Yunbo were on another. And now this old woman had shown up, a faction of her own. And this whole bunch of them were all going around saying the others were dead. It was all so complicated. I had met and spoken with every single one of them, and they all gave me this hazy, ethereal feeling like I couldn't get a solid grasp on any of it. It left me feeling completely unsettled. Before I came to this company, I was a real tough guy, the kind who didn't take crap from anyone. But in just a few short months, I've been turned into a paranoid wuss, watching my every step. As my mind was racing, I got a text. It was from Bai Fan. "It's Friday. I'll take your bus home tonight." Bai Fan always had this ability. Every time we spoke, or even just texted, she could fill my heart with warmth, pulling me back from the endless abyss into a happy reality. A wide grin spread across my face. I quickly replied, "Okay, it's been a few days. See you tonight." I've been getting to know Bai Fan for a while now. We'd had dinner, seen a movie, but I still wasn't sure what our relationship was. Were we a couple or not? Truthfully, I didn't have high hopes about becoming her boyfriend. She was so smart and beautiful. If she really did end up with me, she'd be getting the short end of the stick. I've been so exhausted lately. As I lay there thinking, I finally drifted into a heavy sleep. I don't know how long I was out, but a ridiculously catchy pop song on my phone yanked me from my dreams. The good news was it was by fan calling. I groggily answered the phone, trying my best to sound sharp and clear as I said, "Hello? Liao, what you doing? Can you come get me? I need to catch your bus." I pulled the phone away from my ear to check the time. "What's up, by fan? It's only 8:30. My route doesn't start until 11. "I know, but the power's out of my apartment complex. The whole building is dark. I live on the 13th floor, and the stairwell is pitch black. I'm too scared to go down alone." I was starting to realize that ever since I started driving this Route 13 bus, coincidences just kept piling up. First, Master Lu Yun's address was 2386 Oakwood Avenue, which was the same as my bus number. And now, Bai Fan just so happened to live on the 13th floor. I froze for a second, then quickly agreed. "No problem. I'll head over right now to get you." After hanging up, Bai Fan sent me her address. I scrambled out of bed, threw on some clothes, and rushed out the door. It wasn't a huge deal, but it wasn't nothing either. Bai Fan had thought of me when she was scared. This was a huge opportunity to score points. A classic hero saves the damsel in distress moment. Who else but me? I quickly caught a cab to her complex. As I was walking through the grounds, my mind started to wander. What if Bai Fan invited me into her apartment for a drink of water? A man and a woman, all alone in the dark. Should I take this chance to be a little more proactive, to take our friendship to the next level? Just as I was lost in this pleasant daydream, Bai Fan called again. "Liao, are you here yet?" "I'm here. Walking through the complex now." "Oh, that's great. Hurry up and come get me. I'm scared." Hearing my goddess say she was scared instantly kicked my protective instincts into high gear. I put on a brave voice. "Don't worry, I'm here. I'm not afraid of the dark at all. Coming up to get you now." "Okay, hurry. I'll be waiting." After he hung up, I was ecstatic. For the first time, I felt that darkness wasn't all bad. It was actually giving me a helping hand. Bai Fan lived in a decent, middle-class apartment complex. The stairwell was quite clean and even had small windows. But it was after 9 at night, and without any lights, the stairwell was pitch black. I used a faint glow from my phone to climb the stairs quickly. With a happy mission in my heart, I had a spring in my step. My legs felt full of boundless energy, and I wasn't scared in the slightest. In no time, I reached the 7th floor. Just then, my phone rang again. It was Bai Fan. "Hello? Liao, are you here yet? I just got out of the shower. If you're here, just wait downstairs for a bit. I need to get ready. Then you can come up." I was completely confused by what she said. "I've been here for a while. You called me 5 minutes ago and told me to come up." Bai Fan was silent for a long moment. Then she cursed, "You jerk." Then in a hushed voice, she said, "Liao, I get scared easily. Please don't joke around like that. I've been in the shower this whole time. I never called you." Hearing her words, I looked around at the endless darkness, and my legs instantly went rigid. Hearing the serious tone in Bai Fan's voice over the phone, I sucked in a sharp breath. I had clearly just gotten off the phone with her 5 minutes ago. There was no mistaking it. If it wasn't her, then who called? After everything I'd been through, I was relatively calm, but my legs had a mind of their own and wouldn't stop shaking. I had made it to the 7th floor. It was an awkward spot, 6 more floors to the top, and 6 floors back down to the bottom. Besides, if I ran, what would happen to Bai Fan? She was still in the apartment. No matter who called, or whether it was a trap to lure me upstairs, I had to go save her. I knew this was a setup, but I had to walk right into it. After all, I couldn't let anything happen to Bai Fan. Having made up my mind, I steeled my nerves and continued up the stairs. The 8th floor, the 9th, the 10th. Just a moment ago, climbing to the 7th floor hadn't left me tired or out of breath. But now, every single floor felt agonizingly slow. Each step I took was as heavy as if my feet were filled with lead. Finally, I arrived. Seeing the floor number 13 on the wall filled me with a complex unease. The door to Bai Fan's apartment was ajar, and a bit of candlelight flickered from within. I carefully tilted my head, trying to peek inside. Before I could see anything clearly, a hand shot out from the crack in the door and grabbed me in a death grip. The scene was eerily similar to what happened at Lu Qingzhu's house on Elm Street. I cried out and yanked myself back with all my might. Bai Fan. The person who grabbed me was actually Bai Fan. Covered in a cold sweat, I stared at her in confusion, but she just doubled over with laughter, not a care in the world. "Not bad. You didn't run away even after a scare like that. You actually dared to come up and get me." I stood there, stunned, still not understanding what was going on. Fan smiled again and pulled on my sleeve. That phone call just now was me pulling a prank on you. I know you get scared easily, so I wanted to see if you come upstairs. It was a test of your character. It suddenly dawned on me. It was all a joke. She hadn't forgotten the call. She had said that on purpose. The tension that had gripped me finally loosened, and I let out a long sigh of relief. Thinking back, I was a real idiot. The call history was right there on my phone, and both calls were clearly in by Fan's voice. I can't believe I fell for that. My IQ and EQ must both be in the toilet. Seeing that I hadn't said anything for a while, Fan tilted her head and said softly, I was just teasing you. You're not mad, are you? I quickly shook my head. It's fine, I'm just too on edge. As long as everything's okay. Fan kept smiling as she talked to me. I could tell she was very pleased with my performance. I hadn't known her for very long, but she was already really important to me. If you asked me who I trusted most in my current circle, it would have to be Fan. Fan was in an especially good mood on the way back, chatting nonstop. I felt like after passing this test, our relationship had taken another step forward. For the next few days, I drove my route on schedule. Strangely, everything was exceptionally calm. Old Tang, after his sudden appearance, had vanished without a trace again. I hadn't seen Sixth Uncle in days either, and that old woman never showed up again. But for some reason, I still felt a lingering unease, a sense that something was wrong. I figured the peace and quiet of the last few days was thanks to the bracelet Master Lu Yunbua had given me. It was strange, too. When I first got the bracelet, it was pure black. But over the past few days, it had gradually turned a deep crimson. A treasure is a treasure, I thought. It even changes. In the blink of an eye, it was the 15th of the lunar calendar. I made up my mind to go see Master Lu Yunbua after work. No matter how much it cost, I had to ask him to find a way for me to quit this company. This last bus route, all this creepy stuff, I had had more than enough. But there was still one other thing on my mind. What secret was hidden in the archives room of that small 2-story building? That morning, Old Wu called me. He said the city was concerned about my late-night shifts and the risk of drowsy driving. So they had hired another driver to rotate with me. He'd be reporting for duty in a few days. Igalval beat the Smida. This wasn't good news for me. Having another driver rotate shifts didn't mean I was off the hook completely. I would have rather just done it myself. This wasn't about being tired. It was about dragging another innocent person into this mess. At lunch in the cafeteria, Fatty came and sat down. My relationship with this guy was basically just a nodding acquaintance. I really disliked him. To put it bluntly, he was a two-faced sycophant hiding behind a friendly exterior. Brotherly, I'm throwing a 1-month party for my son tonight. You should come have a drink, just as I expected. His meaning was obvious. Everyone in the company knew I drove the night shift, yet he was inviting me for drinks. He was just hitting me up for a cash gift. Fatty, you know I work the night shift. I can't make it. Hearing this, Fatty grinned. I know you're on nights. Just ask Old Wu for the night off. He's going too. We can all have a good time. That sentence suddenly got my attention. Old Wu is going too. The last time I tried to sneak into the small building, Old Wu was on watch, so I couldn't get into the archives room. If he was going out for drinks tonight, wasn't this the perfect opportunity? With that thought, I pulled $500 from my pocket and handed it to Fatty. Brother, I really can't go. Take this $500. Fatty froze when he saw the $500, his eyes lighting up. He knew that, with our level of acquaintance, a $200 gift would have been plenty. He never expected me to hand over $500. Fatty happily took the money. I leaned in and whispered in his ear, Brother, can you do me a favor? Fatty stuffed the cash into his pocket and nodded vigorously. Brotherly, with our relationship, you just name it. If I can do it, I will. My girlfriend's birthday is tonight, and I have to be with her, but Old Wu is always checking up on me. You know, asking for a day off means losing my bonus. Since Old Wu will be at your party tonight, I was hoping you could help me get him really drunk. So drunk he's unconscious, or at least comes back as late as possible. Hearing this, Fatty's small eyes narrowed into slits. He gave me a lecherous look and said with a grin, I get it, I totally get it. A girl's birthday is the best time to make a move. Leave it to me. I guarantee I'll get him so wasted he won't know what hit him. You just go enjoy your long, romantic night. But hey, take it easy, you know? Hearing that it was a done deal, I joked around with him a bit more, and we both went our separate ways, having gotten what we wanted. Fatty's dinner party was at 7 in the evening. After lunch, I went back and started preparing early. Old Wu would definitely lock the building door when he left for the party. I'd seen the lock before, a super thick iron chain fastened with a padlock. I went to a hardware store and bought a pair of extra-large bolt cutters, a crowbar, and a flashlight. With these, I could get through more than just a simple padlock. I could probably crack a safe. Starting at 6 o'clock, I paced around the company compound about a dozen times, keeping an eye on Old Woo for 3 hours. It wasn't until 9 that he finally left. I quickly circled around to the small 2-story building, pried open the main door in a few moves, and slipped inside. Since I'd been here once before, I knew where the archives room was. I didn't dare to waste time and went straight for the room at the far east end of the second floor. Just like last time, the closer I got to the archives room, the stronger the foul, fishy stench became. It was so overwhelming it made my head spin. I don't know if Old Woo had a bad sense of smell or what, but how he could sleep with such a strong odor was beyond me. Luckily, I was quick, and I managed to pick the lock on the archives room door in less than 10 minutes. I shone my flashlight around the room. The dilapidated archives room was covered in a thick layer of dust. Besides a cabinet full of files and a wobbly, 3-legged table, the room was empty. This old building had been abandoned for 10 years without being demolished, and every other room was completely empty. I never expected this one to actually contain documents. Old Tang's secret had to be in this filing cabinet. I opened the long-sealed cabinet, and a cloud of dust billowed out, making me cough for a good while. There wasn't much inside the cabinet. The most conspicuous items were 3 folders set off to one side. I grabbed one at random and was just about to open it when my phone rang. It was Fatty. A jolt of alarm went through me. Crap, something must have gone wrong over there. Hey, brotherly, I have to tell you, Old Woo only had a couple of drinks before he said he forgot something and rushed back. I tried my best to keep him here, but I couldn't. When did he leave? Fatty paused for a moment, then laughed awkwardly. He left about half an hour ago. I figure he's almost there by now. I wanted to call you sooner, but these bastards kept toasting me one after another. I just now got a free moment. I hung up before he could finish. I knew where Fatty lived. It was only about a 30-minute drive from the company. Old Woo should be arriving any second. Gotta go. I shoved the folder I was holding into my coat pocket, quickly closed the cabinet, shut the door, and ran out like a madman. I kept my head down in the compound, tried to walk out as quickly as possible. But as luck would have it, I ran right into Old Woo. Liao, what's the rush? Feeling guilty, I lifted my head and met his gaze. In the dim moonlight, I thought Old Woo's eyes looked exactly like the psycho killer from Saw. Nothing, Brother Woo. Just heading out to star my route. Okay then. Be safe. After he said that, Old Woo patted my shoulder and walked off toward the back of the office building. I glanced back and saw that he was heading straight for that abandoned 2-story building. I had already pried the door open. Even though he didn't catch me red-handed, he could probably guess it was me with his eyes closed. I checked the time. It was 10:50. There was no time to worry about that now. I had to get to my bus. Maybe because it was the 15th of the lunar calendar, there were an unusual number of passengers tonight. Usually, there were only about 10 people, but tonight the bus was half full. When we got near the reservoir, one of the passengers was desperate to pee and begged me to stop so he could relieve himself. According to the rules, bus drivers aren't supposed to make unscheduled stops. But we were on a country road, and there was no other traffic. So I pulled the bus over and let the man get off. While waiting for him, I remembered the folder I had stolen from the archives room and opened it up. Inside the folder were 3 forms. They looked like the personnel files for the 3 drivers involved in the Route 13 bus accident 10 years ago. The first form was for Tang Xiansheng from Austin, Texas. 15 years of driving experience. While on the Oak Creek route, he accidentally drove the bus into the reservoir with 30 people on board. The second form was for a driver named Wang Kai from Portland, Oregon. 13 years of driving experience. While on the Oak Creek route, he accidentally drove the bus into the reservoir with 28 people on board. By the time I finished looking through the 3 forms, the passenger who'd gotten out to relieve himself had returned. I tossed the papers aside and started the bus. On the road, I couldn't stop thinking about those forms. They were just driver profiles, nothing that should be a secret. Was the secret Uncle Six mentioned hidden in the other 2 folders? I glanced at the forms beside me, a thought nagging at me. Strange, why were all 3 drivers carrying so many passengers on the days of their accidents? Then I saw a small line of text in the bottom right corner, written in black ink. Do not carry a full load. Those words felt so familiar, like I'd heard them somewhere before. Suddenly, it hit me. I had heard them. That time on Willow Creek Road when I ran into Lu Qingzhu by mistake. As I was getting away, he'd yelled, "Do not carry a..." But I didn't catch the rest. That had to be it. He was trying to say, do not carry a full load. But why would he tell me that? I glanced in the rearview mirror at the passengers. There had to be 27, maybe 28 people on board. This was the most crowded my late-night run had ever been. My curiosity getting the better of me, I looked at the forms one more time. What I saw sent a jolt of pure terror through me. On the forms, the dates of all 3 drivers' accidents were the same. The night of the 15th. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. I needed to pull over to calm down, but just then the brakes failed. I stomped on the pedal, but the bus, like a crazed bull, just accelerated, hurtling straight for the reservoir. The brakes failed. Without any warning, the bus hurtled towards the reservoir. To make matters worse, the steering wheel was dead too. It was the most terrifying and helpless I had ever felt in my life. My foot was jammed down on the brake pedal, and my hands were frantically spinning the wheel, but the bus seemed to have a mind of its own, hell-bent on plunging into the reservoir. The other villagers in the bus sensed something was wrong and started to panic. One of the younger women began to wail, her shrieks as piercing as a pig at slaughter. The moment I realized the brakes and steering had failed, my subconscious was already screaming at me to find a way out. It was a hot day, and the window next to me was wide open. If I wanted to, I could have easily jumped out before the bus hit the water. But the thought lasted less than a second. I've never been much of a people person, but I'm not a bad guy. At a time like this, if the driver bailed, this bus full of people would be doomed. A pilot is the last one off during a crash landing, and a captain is the last to leave a sinking ship. I may just be a lowly bus driver, not a captain of anything. People look down on me, call me uncultured, but I have a conscience. I have a sense of duty. Blackwood Reservoir had been abandoned for years. The edge was lined with nothing more than a symbolic row of flimsy wooden posts. I knew that the second we hit the water, it would all be over. Just as the bus crushed the wooden posts and was about to nosedive into the reservoir, I suddenly felt an immense pulling force from behind. The force was so strong it literally dragged the bus to a halt, sending everyone flying forward from the sheer inertia. Most of the villagers were scraped and bruised from being thrown around, but thankfully, the bus had stopped. The front bumper was less than 2 feet from the water's edge. My hands, still gripping the steering wheel, wouldn't stop shaking. My heart was pounding in my chest. I wasn't dead. After catching my breath for a moment and making sure the bus was stable, I slammed my foot on the brake with every ounce of strength I had, opened the rear doors, and yelled to the villagers behind me, "Get off. Don't push. One at a time. Move slowly." The second they saw the doors open, they forgot everything I said. They swarmed the exit like madmen. They're pushing and shoving, making the bus rock precariously from side to side. My heart leaped into my throat. I wanted to scream at them to stop pushing, but I was so tense I couldn't get a single word out. After the last person was safely off, I finally let out a breath. The leg I had locked on the brake was trembling uncontrollably, and it had gone completely numb. I tried slowly lifting my foot. Seeing the bus didn't move, I cautiously crawled out of the driver's seat. Yes, crawled. I had no strength left. Crawling was my only option. I crawled out of the bus and collapsed beside it, thinking the stars in the night sky looked especially beautiful. The villagers, terrified, had already scrambled up to the road. They stood there, shaken, staring at the reservoir, the bus, and me. And yet, not a single one of them came over to help me up. Not one. I let out a long sigh and stumbled to my feet. I called Wu. When he heard about the terrifying incident, he was so scared he was stuttering on the other end of the line. An hour later, Wu showed up with some men. They towed both the bus and me back. The next day, the mechanic's inspection report sent me into despair. There was nothing wrong. The bus was in perfect condition. No damage, no malfunctions. I stood numbly in Wu's office. He lit a cigarette and held it in his mouth, staring at me with a worried expression. "Lee, my boy, you feeling any better?" I nodded blankly and asked in a small voice, "Wu, were the villagers all right?" Wu took a drag from his cigarette, a helpless look on his face. "They're fine. Some scrapes and bruises. As long as no one died, it's fine." After saying that, his eyes darted around. He leaned in close and whispered, "Lee, it's just us here. Tell me the truth. Were you drinking last night?" I gave a weak, helpless smile. "Wu, I've been with the company for a year. Have you ever seen me drink before a shift? Besides, I drive the late-night route. I value my life." Hearing this, Wu crossed his legs and pushed a report across the desk toward me. "I'm telling you, there's nothing wrong with the bus. After old Lou checked it, I had 2 other guys look it over. Hell, I even had them inspect the goddamn seats. They all said it's clean. When I didn't say anything, Wu sighed and continued. Look, Lee, you're the most honest guy on our team. I've always thought well of you. Even if I believe you, how am I supposed to write a report to the higher-ups? Bus with no mechanical failures tried to drive itself into a reservoir. I wasn't in the mood to bullshit with Wu about his report. All I could think about was finding Master Lu Yunbua. We were supposed to meet after my shift last night, but then this happened. I made up my mind. I was quitting. Even if it cost me everything I had, even if I had to pawn my own underwear, I was done. I now understood the true terror of this last bus route. It was far worse than I had ever imagined. This time, I had truly smelled death. Seeing my distracted state, Wu cursed, "God damn it," then waved his hand in resignation. Fine, go home. Take a few days off and rest. I'll have a temp driver come in this afternoon. You go home and don't do anything but sleep, you hear me? I didn't say a word, just turned and left the office, nearly running into Lu Sheng and Fatty, who were on their way in. The moment Fatty saw me, he threw an arm around my shoulder, his face grave. What happened, Brother Lee? I heard you almost ended up in the reservoir last night. I had to hand it to him. Money really did talk. I'd given him $500 for his son's 1-month celebration, and now he was treating me like family. It's nothing, I muttered. Road was bad. Fatty started to say something else, but I shrugged his hand off my shoulder and walked past him. I wasn't interested in anyone's concern right now. Cheating death last night didn't guarantee I'd live a long life. Until I saw Master Lu Yunbua, I wouldn't have a moment's peace. 2386 Faraway Road. Arriving at the apartment complex again, I was filled with anticipation. The place was the same as before. Crumbling brickwork and walls coated in a layer of grimy, peeling paint. And of course, the blind old man. The old man was sitting by the entrance, slowly waving a fan, just as he had been 2 weeks ago. I knew the terrifying sight of his all-white eyes when they were open, so I tried to walk quietly to avoid his attention. But before I could step inside, a voice called out from behind me. Hey, you're the young man who was looking for Lu Qingzhu last time, aren't you? It was the same woman who had mistakenly led me to Lu Qingzhu's place before. Ma'am, that's me, I said, but I'm not here for him this time. Not wanting to chat, I gave a brief reply and kept walking. She seemed to have more to say, so I quickly ducked into the building's entryway. She seemed to know that Lu Qingzhu so well, but he had burned to death in this building 10 years ago. So what did that make her? I soon reached Master Lu Yunbua's apartment on the 3rd floor. Unfortunately, no matter how much I knocked or called out, there was no answer. I was supposed to meet the master after my shift on the 15th, but after last night's accident, my legs were too weak to even walk. In any case, I was the one who missed the appointment, so it was only normal that he wasn't home. When I left the complex, I was surprised to see the woman still standing by the entrance. She hurried over to me with a grin. You're in such a rush, young man. You disappeared before I could finish what I was saying. I hadn't expected her to wait. I looked at her, confused. She continued. Lu Qingzhu told me this morning that you'd be coming today. He asked me to give you a message. I froze. What? He told you I was coming today? Yep. He told me to give you 4 words. If someone knocks, don't open. If someone knocks, don't open. I repeated the words, staring at her in bewilderment. The woman didn't say anything more. She just gave me a smile and went over to tend to the blind old man. All the way back to the dorm, I turned the words over in my mind. The last time I was here, Lu Qingzhu had shouted, "Don't take a full bus." And last night's accident happened when I had the most passengers. Was that a coincidence? When I got back to the company, Wu called. He told me the temp driver would arrive this evening and that he'd be rooming with me. This was a deadly, cursed job. I didn't want to drag an innocent person into it, so I immediately refused. But Wu was dead set on it. He wouldn't listen to a word I said and insisted the new guy would share my shifts. He just told me to get a bed ready for the new guy and then hung up on me. At 7 that evening, the new guy actually showed up. He was short, maybe 5'4", but built like a propane tank. Unlike the cunning fatty from our team, this guy had a kind face and a welcoming smile. You could tell right away he was a simple, honest man without a deceptive bone in his body. The short, stout man saw me lying on my bed and scurried over to shake my hand. Hey, buddy, you must be Liao. I'm your new shift partner, Lu Yiheng. I was still lying down, caught off guard as he grabbed my hand. I pulled my hand back and said coldly, "Go back where you came from. You can't handle the Route 13 bus." My cold shoulder didn't faze Lu Yiheng. He just kept smiling. "I can handle it, buddy. I drove a taxi for 5 years and a big rig for 5 years. I came here ready to drive a bus for the next 5. I figured this guy was stubborn and I wouldn't be able to get rid of him so easily, so I just ignored him. Seeing it was getting late, I got up, dressed, and hurried back to Master Lu Yun's place. Unfortunately, he still wasn't home. As I crouched by his door, waiting anxiously, I noticed a faint, foul stench. I searched for the source and found it was coming from my bracelet. I took it off and examined it. The beads were still vermilion red, but strangely, where they had once been rock hard, they were now soft. They even dented slightly when I touched them. I held my phone's flashlight closer for a better look, and a cold sweat broke out all over my body. The bracelet was starting to rot. I remember a joke my cousin once made. A human eyeball only lasts for about 2 weeks when exposed to air. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself, and stuffed the bracelet into my pocket. I'd ask Master Lu about it in detail when I saw him. I waited on edge until after midnight, but he never returned. With no other choice, I went back to the company. When I got back to my dorm room, I thought for a second I'd walked into the wrong place. The floor was polished to a shine, the beds were neatly made, and all the trash I usually left lying around had been cleared away. Just as I was taking it all in, the short, stout man pushed the door open. Seeing me, he smiled. "Hey buddy, when did you get back?" "I just got it myself." I glanced at the time in surprise. "It's after 1 in the morning. Where have you been?" "I was driving, of course. Just finished my shift." His words sent a jolt through me. "What? You drove the Route 13 bus? Where did you get the keys?" The new guy nodded cheerfully. "Captain Wu gave them to me this afternoon." I sighed. I had planned to send him packing after I sorted out my own problems, but I never expected he'd take the bus out on his very first night. I was one step too late. I wiped a bead of sweat from my brow and asked worriedly, "Did you have a lot of passengers tonight? Did anything strange happen?" "Nothing strange at all. No traffic at this hour. The only weird thing was I didn't have a single passenger the whole night." He said this with a chuckle, clearly pleased with his first day on the job. He sighed inwardly. After nearly crashing with a full bus last night, the news had probably spread through the village near Blackwood. It was no surprise that no one was riding today. The new guy opened his locker to change clothes, then suddenly seemed to remember something. "Oh, that's not quite true. I did have one passenger, but I only noticed her on the way back from the paper mill." "Why did you only notice her on the way back?" I asked, surprised. He said casually, "I didn't see her on the trip out. Just as I was about to head back, she knocked on my window. It was an old woman. She'd left her vegetable basket on the bus." Hearing that, the color drained from my face. My heart sank. This is bad. Seeing the color drain from my face, Fatty asked in surprise, "What's wrong, man?" I asked nervously. "Did the old lady say anything to you after she got her basket?" "Not much. I saw she was having trouble walking, so I helped her off the bus. She just said I was a good person." Fatty finished with a bashful smile. I shot him a contemptuous look, thinking to myself, what's there to be so smug about? You don't even know if that old lady was human or a ghost. This Fatty, despite being a bit dim-witted, was genuinely a good soul. In a society where people are like dust, good people like him were truly rare. Now that he'd driven the bus and given the old lady a ride, he was, just like me, bound by fate to the last run of Route 13. I figured I'd wait for the right time to explain things to him. The night passed without incident. Early the next morning, Old Wu sent a notice in the group chat. Our station had been named an advanced collective in the citywide activity competition. Several drivers were also named advanced individuals, each receiving a $500 bonus. I didn't feel happy seeing the news. It wasn't that I lacked a sense of collective honor, but the ones named advanced individuals were all a bunch of fat-headed drivers with cushy jobs. I drove the night route every day, risking my life, but just because I was the quiet, simple type, I didn't even get a verbal commendation. That's the kind of irony society reserves for honest folks. The drivers that got the awards were naturally thrilled and immediately started sucking up in the group chat. It's all thanks to Brother Wu's great leadership. Half of this award is mine, and the other half is yours. Only one advanced collective is chosen in the whole city each quarter. Brother Wu's leadership skills could really give Jack Ma a run for his money. Give Jack Ma a run for his money? When I saw that line, I almost laughed my head off that a boss who did nothing all day but drink tea and listen to the radio was now being put on the same level as a tech billionaire. Old Wu must have been a little embarrassed himself. He finally replied amidst the flood of compliments. "Oh, Lu Sheng, you're exaggerating. I can't compare to Jack Ma." For a second, I thought Old Wu had some sense of shame, but then he followed up with, "But I'm probably on par with Richard Liu." I was speechless. I just wanted to get away from this shameless bunch, just as I was about to toss my phone aside, I saw someone suggest a big party to celebrate. Old Woo, who loved a good meal and a drink, immediately agreed. They settled on a company barbecue in the main yard tonight. I had zero interest in eating and drinking with them. If Old Tang were still around and not a ghost, still my friend like before, maybe it would have been different. But now, looking at the people in this company, I didn't have a single friend. The new guy from yesterday, a short, stout fellow named Lu Yiheng, saw the company had won an award and was throwing a party. He grinned at me and said, "Hey man, our company's pretty awesome, huh? An advanced collective. I can get to know all the other drivers at the party tonight." I sneered and said, "Let me give you a piece of advice, Lou. Everyone here is an old fox. They could sell you out and still have you grinning and thanking them." Lu Yiheng's silly grin just got wider. "Come on, man. I'm not a pig being fattened for slaughter. Why would they sell me?" Hearing that, I was certain the kid was missing a few screws. I didn't want to waste any more breath on him, so I just looked down and started making my bed. Seeing my silence, Lu Yiheng walked over to my bunk and started tidying my table. He said, "Hey man, anyway, I can tell you're a good guy." When I still didn't respond, he continued, "My dad was desperate for a boy. I have 5 older sisters, so I'm the 6th child in the family. Everyone's called me Xiao Lu my whole life. You could just call me Xiao Lu too." He finished with another one of his dopey laughs. I just grunted in response, thinking to myself, your dad sure had it rough. After 5 kids, he finally gets the son he wanted, and he turns out to be this much of an idiot. After we finished tidying up the dorm, Xiao Lu and I went to the cafeteria to eat. As we passed through the company yard, we saw 2 drivers carrying a large bronze clock into the office building. Old Wu was standing by, grinning and constantly reminding them, "Put in the first floor lobby. Careful, careful. This clock is expensive." As I passed Old Wu, I asked, "Brother Wu, where'd you get the giant bronze clock?" Old Wu's grin stretched from ear to ear, his eyes nearly disappearing. "We were named an advanced collective, weren't we? The head of the city's public transit group had his people deliver it personally." I took a closer look at the bronze clock. It was a mantle-style clock made of red copper. Looked like something from the early 20th century. In any case, you could tell it was an old piece. Without thinking, I blurted out, "Brother Wu, this clock is so old. Why would they give it as a gift? Besides, giving a clock is bad luck. It sounds like you're seeing someone off to their end." What was the transit head thinking? Old Wu's face changed the instant he heard that. He shot me a sideways glance and snapped, "You're just a wet-behind-the-ears kid. What the hell do you know?" Then he explained excitedly, "The word for clock, zhong, can also mean finally. I bet the head's message is that we finally earned the advanced collective title, and he's very pleased." Old Wu was clearly grasping at straws, but that's how most bosses get by. On their gift of gab, I wasn't in the mood to argue with him, so I just nodded and went to the cafeteria with Xiao Lu. Preparations for the evening barbecue were in full swing. Many cafeteria employees were busy skewering meat. Xiao Lu's mouth started watering at the sight of the meat skewers. He nudged me. "Hey man, how many beers can you handle?" I mumbled through a mouthful of food. 2 is perfect, 3 gets me buzzed, 4, and I'm puking my guts out. Xiao Lu practically fell over laughing. He said, "Man, you had me fooled. Seeing all the empty bottles in our dorm, I figured you for a heavy drinker." I gestured with my chopsticks for him to keep it down, then lower my voice. "Xiao Lu, we're roommates now, and we're partners driving the same bus on different shifts. There's something I need to tell you." Xiao Lu stopped laughing and nodded seriously. "Go ahead, man. I'm listening." "This last run on Route 13, we're driving. It's not for ordinary people. There have been incidents. The passengers you see late at night, it's best not to interact with them if you can help it. Especially that old lady who dropped her vegetable basket." After I said that, worried he wouldn't get it, I whispered again, slowly and deliberately, "This bus has had incidents." Xiao Lu popped a piece of fatty meat into his mouth and nodded grimly. "Got it, man. We're on the same page. You don't have to spell it out. I get what you're saying. The roads are hard to see at night, and talking to passengers is a dangerous distraction. But don't you worry, I'm an old pro. My driving skills are top-notch." Hearing that, I lost all hope for the guy that I'm 30-something years old, and he was the first person I'd ever met who was this dense. After lunch, Xiao Lu and some other off-duty drivers were called to help set up for the party. I hadn't seen Master Lu Yunbo for a few days, and I was feeling uneasy, especially since the bracelet he gave me had started to rot for some reason. As the sun began to set, I rushed over to the apartment complex at 2368 Willow Creek Road. The whole way there, I prayed that Master Lu Yunbo would be home. The blind old man was still sitting at the complex entrance, but the woman I'd seen before was nowhere in sight. I hurried up to the third floor, and to my surprise, Master Lu Yunbo was standing right at his door. He gave me a benevolent smile as I approached, and my sixth sense told me I was going to be saved. Once inside, I recounted the bizarre events of the 15th in detail. Lu Yunbo paced slowly around the room as he listened. When I finished, he smiled and said, "Your situation has become quite serious. There's nothing wrong with the bus, that's for sure. This is an evil spirit from the reservoir looking to claim a life in its place." I nodded heavily. "Master, please show me a way out. You had to find a way to get me off that bus. The other night, I was as close to ending up as a corpse in the newspaper." Lu Yunbo waved his hand. "I told you before, once you drive that bus for the first time, you can't easily walk away. The bracelet I gave you is meant to ward off disaster for you. I suspect that after blocking such a great calamity, the bracelet must have been corroded by the evil spirit." I nodded heavily again. So that was it. No wonder the beads were starting to rot. It had absorbed the evil spirit after saving my life. I handed the bracelet to Lu Yunbo and asked worriedly, "This bracelet is ruined. What am I supposed to do now?" Just like last time, Lu Yunbo turned and went into his bedroom. He came out a moment later with a piece of white linen that looked like it was stained with blood. He handed it to me and said, "Go tie this to the door of Lu Qingzhu's apartment on the 8th floor." The name Lu Qingzhu made my head buzz. What? Tie it to Lu Qingzhu's door? Yes. Don't worry, he's not home. The spirit haunting you is a ghost who drowned 10 years ago. That old coot happens to be the ghost of someone who burned to death 10 years ago. I'll see if I can't pit the two against each other. After that, you should be fine when you drive." It was like a light bulb went off in my head. I nodded, gritted my teeth, took the blood-stained cloth, and headed upstairs. I'd been to Lu Qingzhu's place once before. It was the middle apartment on the 8th floor. I stood at the door for a long time, not daring to move, afraid that a hand would suddenly reach out and grab me like last time that I swallowed hard, my hands trembling as I tied the cloth to the doorknob. Then I bolted, running away as fast as I could. Having seen Master Lu Yunbo and tied the bloody cloth to the door, I finally felt a little more at ease. Despite Old Wu's objections, I took the bus out right on schedule. My heart still pounded in my chest whenever I passed the reservoir. But thankfully, the trip was uneventful. It seemed that after the near disaster the other night, no one dared to take the bus into the city anymore. On my way to the paper mill with an empty bus, I even saw groups of villagers heading back in ox-drawn carts that made sense. They'd almost lost their lives. I had left them with a deep psychological scar. When I got back to the station, the yard was brightly lit. The party was clearly in full swing, and most people were 3 sheets to the wind. Aside from those still chugging at the tables, many were too unsteady to stand, and some had even crawled under the tables to pass out. Xiao Lu saw me and grabbed my arm. "You're finally back. Come on, we gotta have a drink together." He pulled me over to a seat at Old Wu's table. Old Wu was already slurring his words, calling one person little brother, the next big brother, and then switching to uncle. After another round of drinks, Xiao Lu got up to use the bathroom in the office building. He came back grinning and said to Old Wu, "Brother Wu, that big bronze clock you got today is busted. It stopped. The pendulum isn't even swinging." Old Wu's eyes bulged. He pointed a hand at the office building. "Impossible. That was a gift from the head of the city's transit group. You're drunk and seeing things." Hearing this, Fatty staggered to his feet. He looked at Old Wu, then pointed at the office building. "Brother Wu, I'm a bit pee-shy, so I gotta use the indoor toilet anyway. I'll go check it out myself." Everyone roared with laughter. Fatty Shy Bladder was famous at the company. Normally, when they were out for late-night street barbecue, where there were no restrooms, everyone else would just find a tree or a corner. But Fatty, afraid of being seen, would go to great lengths to find a proper toilet. Fatty left, and we went back to drinking. Not long after, we heard a blood-curdling scream, an HHH. So piercing it jolted every drunk in the yard sobered, we scrambled toward the sound, running into the office building. Inside, in the first-floor lobby, we found Lu Sheng, curled up and trembling in a corner, pointing at the bronze clock. We followed his gaze. There was a large splash of blood on the clock's face. Kneeling in front of it was a person, their head hanging down, a bloody, mangled mess. They were clearly dead. From a back, we could see it was Fatty, who had just left the table to go to the bathroom. As we stood there, too shocked to speak, a figure emerged from around a corner in the lobby. He staggered and slurred. "Who the hell is screaming in the middle of the night?" When we saw who it was, we all froze in terror. The man was none other than Fatty. There were two fatties. Two people had died in front of the Bronze Bell in just over a week. The news spread like wildfire, making our Crescent Street bus station infamous throughout the city. Rumors ran rampant. The story of the Killer Bell was twisted by netizens into countless memes and creepypastas that circulated madly online. A few days later, someone from the Transit Authority came by and took back the model unit banner we had just been awarded. Our little, usually ignored bus station was suddenly at the center of a public storm. Oldwood had been run rag these past few days, shuttling between the city government, the main depot, and the police department. He'd barely had a chance to sit down in his office. The teacup he usually sipped from all day had finally collected a layer of dust. After the man in black died, the first-floor lobby was completely sealed off. All employees had to use the side entrance in the stairwell. The police wanted to haul the Bronze Bell away, but they ran into the same embarrassing problem we had. It couldn't be lifted, pushed, or pried. Police commissioners from the city even came down a few times because of it, but they all left empty-handed. Eventually, someone even suggested blowing it up. But considering the potential collateral damage, they decided to just seal off the area and wait until the investigation was complete. I had saved the text message from the delivery guy. Without it, I never would have guessed in a million years that the murderous Bronze Bell had been sent by Master Lu Yunbua, a man I had once deeply admired. The fact that the bell killed people was undeniable. It was clear now. Lu Yunbua could no longer be trusted. I didn't have the mental energy to guess why he would send a cursed, murderous bell to our company. I was more worried about what kind of trouble my handful of interactions with him over the past couple of weeks would bring me. The black pearl bracelet, the blood-stained linen strip. Whatever his scheme was, I had clearly been his unwitting, idiotic pawn. With everything piling up, I hadn't contacted by Fan. She saw the news this morning and texted to ask how it was that I didn't want to scare her by making things sound too strange. So I just told her the two deaths were suicides. Bai Fan told me she was going to Chicago for a week on a business trip and would treat me to dinner when she got back. Naturally, I was happy to hear it. But right now, I truly had zero energy for romance. I lay in bed, trying to categorize and make sense of every person I had met recently, but it was all just a tangled mess. The complexity of the situation had spun completely out of my control. Seeing me moping around all day, Xiao Lu told me to get some rest and offered to cover my shifts for a few days. The recent events had hit me hard, and I was grateful for the care of this simple-hearted guy. That evening, feeling utterly dejected, I bought a six-pack of beer to drown my sorrows back at the dorm. On my way, I ran into Old Wu chewing out the guard at the gatehouse. When he saw me, Old Wu gave the guard a few more brief instructions and then followed me. "Hey, Lee, the company's in chaos, and you've got something to celebrate." I shook my head, embarrassed. "Celebrate what? There's just been too much on my mind. Can't sleep. A few beers might help me finally pass out." "Good idea. I've got a gut full of anger myself. Let's the two of us have a drink." Old Wu followed me back to my dorm room. We each grabbed a beer and a bag of peanuts. Before we could even toast, Old Wu chugged half his bottle in one go, wiped his mouth, and cursed viciously. "Son of a bitch. I'm 50-something years old, and I've never been so wrongly blamed for something in my life." Old Wu was used to being respected at the station. His word was law. Although he wasn't directly responsible for the two deaths, they happened on his turf, so he had to take the fall. "Brother Wu," I began, "I found out who sent the bell. Do you know Lu Yunbua?" Old Wu shook his head wearily. "The police asked me about him, too. I swear to God, I don't know the guy. I've kept my head down for years, never made any powerful enemies." I knew Old Wu was hiding something. The very fact that his office was across from the archives on the second floor suggested things weren't so simple. Since he didn't want to talk, I decided to see if I could bait something out of him. "Here, Brother Wu, bottoms up." Miserable. Old Wu drained the rest of his bottle in one gulp. "Brother Wu, there's no smoke without fire. Think hard, there has to be something," I said casually as I opened another beer for him. Old Wu let out a boozy burp, his eyes narrowing to slits. "I really haven't pissed anyone off. If you're talking about strange things, that would have to be something from over 10 years ago." My ears perked up instantly. Ever since I started driving the last bus on Route 13, I've been circling around 3 car accidents from a decade ago. If I was ever going to get out of this mess, I at least needed to know who the good guys and bad guys were, and the whole story. I handed the beer to Old Wu and asked, feigning indifference, I know about the 3 accidents at the reservoir 10 years ago. What really happened? Old Wu swirled the bottle in his hand. Nah, it's got nothing to do with that. 10 years ago, I saw a monster out at Tiger Ridge. What? A monster? Old Wu clinked his bottle against mine, then downed a third of it before letting out a ragged breath. Back in the 90s, before I was a driver, I leased a plot of land in Tiger Ridge Village. During the spring planting, my plow turned up a tiger-striped bronze coin. A tiger-striped coin? That's an antique. A good thing, right? Good, my ass. Old Wu snapped. At first, I thought so too. Figured it was a valuable antique, and maybe there was a tomb under my land. So I got a few buddies together, and every night, when no one was around, we'd go out to the field and dig. As he said this, he seemed to recall a painful memory and let out a long sigh. We dug up that whole damn field, and we actually found tunnel. After a quick discussion, the few of us decided to go down. I was completely absorbed in his story when I noticed Old Wu's eyes had turned red. I raised my beer and took a drink with him. He paused for a moment, then continued. The tunnel was long and dark. We were blinded by greed, pushing forward with nothing but lighters and shovels until we reached the end. Turns out, it was a damn monster's nest. A whole nest of them. As we turned to run, our friend Lao Sen tripped, and they dragged him away. He was torn to shreds. Not even a whole body was left. A chill ran down my spine. What kind of monsters? What did they look like? Old Wu closed his eyes and said softly, something you never want to see a second time. At this, something else seemed to click in his mind. He opened his eyes and looked around. Right? I heard the police say that this bronze bell was unearthed at Tiger Ridge 2 years ago. An outsider used his connections with the village chief to get it. I bet it was this Lu Yunbua guy. Connections with the village chief? Old Wu's words were a revelation. If the bell was from Tiger Ridge, then Lu Yunbua was likely the one who took it. And if Lu Yunbua had connections with the village chief, it meant the chief must know him well. Whether Lu Yunbua and my uncle were good or evil, human or ghost, one meeting with the village chief would reveal everything. After sharing his story, Old Wu began drinking furiously. Before long, he was passed out on the table. The next morning, I bought a bus ticket to Tiger Ridge. Xiao Lu insisted on coming with me, despite my protests. We caught the first bus out. Tiger Ridge was about 35 miles past a town called Miller's Crossing. By the time we arrived, it was already noon. The moment we stepped into the village, we felt a chill. It wasn't the temperature. It was the strange way the villagers were looking at us. The village was mostly populated by children, young adults, and the elderly. Middle-aged people were a rare sight, though we stopped a young man leading an ox. "Excuse me, buddy. Could you tell us where the village chief lives?" The young man stared at us for a long time with vacant eyes. Then suddenly his mouth split into a wide, cold grin. His smile gave both Xiao Lu and me the creeps. "Hey man, can you stop smiling for a second? I need to find the chief. It's important." The young man's grin grew even wider, then snapped shut, his face returning to a chillingly blank expression. His empty eyes and deadpan face were terrifying. Xiao Lu started to speak again, but I quickly pulled him away, and we kept walking till we encountered several more people like the ox herder. We asked 2 or 3 others for directions, but they were all incredibly slow to react, as if they couldn't understand what we were saying. And their eyes were all the same, cold, hopeless, with a hint of cruel amusement. Xiao Lu was getting scared. He whispered to me, "Dude, have you noticed? These villagers are weird. A little weird, yeah. But it's broad daylight. What's there to be afraid of?" As we walked, Xiao Lu mumbled, "Their eyes. It's like how a predator looks at its prey." His casual remark sent a shiver through me. "Don't be ridiculous," I said, annoyed. "You've been watching too much National Geographic." Other than the strange people, the village wasn't much different from my own rural hometown. Brick walls, tiled roofs, crops in the fields. It felt familiar. We followed the road to the edge of the village. Here, fields stretched out on 3 sides, and the road ended. At the end of the path stood an old well, its stone rim wrapped in red cloth, with small red flags stuck in the ground around it. Although I grew up in the countryside, we used hand pump wells. I had never seen an ancient, round-mouthed well like this before. Curious, Xiao Lu and I walked over for a closer look. Just as we leaned over the edge to peer down, a voice shouted from behind us, "Don't look in there." We spun around. The person who had shouted was a young man in his 20s, his clothes caked with mud, a sickle tucked into his belt. Seeing we were strangers, he asked, "You 2 are from the city, right? Who are you here to visit?" I was relieved to see that his eyes and speech were completely normal. I quickly walked over. We came from a city. We need to see the village chief about something. Do you know where he lives? The young man pointed toward a tiled roof house to the east. See that yard over there with the tractor? That's the chief's place. Before I could ask the chief's name, the young man turned and walked away. Xiao Lu and I headed in the direction he had pointed. The chief's yard was large, with 3 large piles of corn on the west side and a tractor parked on the other. The door was unlocked. We knocked, but no one answered, so we pushed it open and went inside. The room was Spartan. A quilt was piled on a traditional earthen bed, and aside from a table and a few potted plants on the floor, there was little else. From the moment we entered, Xiao Lu had been staring at the brick wall next to the bed. After a long moment, he suddenly whipped his head around and yelled, "Man, get over here. Look who's in this photo." The wall was covered with old black and white pictures. I walked over to the one Xiao Lu was pointing at and was struck speechless. The photo showed 5 burly men in camouflage. The one on the far left was Old Wu. Xiao Lu didn't recognize the man next to Old Wu, who had his arms slung around his shoulders. But I could never forget him that he was short and stout, with a kind face marred by a scar on his right cheek. It was Lu Yunbua. Just last night, Old Wu had sworn up and down that he didn't know Lu Yunbua. But in this photo, they were shoulder to shoulder, looking like old friends that a cold sweat broke out on my forehead. I shifted my gaze to the right, and what I saw made my legs give out, sending me collapsing to the floor. The man with his arm around Lu Yunbua's shoulders was none other than the first driver of the Route 13 night bus. A man who had been dead for 10 years. It was Old Tang. The 5 men in the photo, dressed in camouflage, had their arms slung over each other's shoulders like close brothers in arms. I was already stunned to see Lu Yunbua and Lao Wu in the same photo. But I never imagined that Lao Tang and Lu Yunbua were old acquaintances too. I stared in despair at the black and white photo on the wall, thinking how pathetic I was. In front of these old-timers, I was being played for an absolute fool. Just as I was lost in thought, the door creaked open with a scree, and an old man in his 70s walked in. This man wore a straw hat, a white tank top, and black nylon trousers. He had to be the owner of this house, the chief of Tiger Ridge Village. Seeing me and Xiao Lu standing in his home, the old man asked quizzically, "And who might you two be?" I quickly stepped forward to shake his hand. "You must be the chief. We're from a city, here to ask you about something." The chief looked me up and down, then said slowly, "Ask about what?" "Chief, I just wanted to ask about the men in this photo." I pointed to the black and white picture on the wall as I spoke. The chief glanced at the wall, then looked at me suspiciously, his eyes flicking to Xiao Lu behind me. "What about them? Why are you asking about them?" When I came here, I had only intended to learn about Lu Yunbua. But after seeing that photo, I realized how naive I'd been. One of these 3 men was once my buddy, another my boss, and the third my greatest benefactor. But in the blink of an eye, everything had changed. The living and the dead walked different paths. These 3 men, who should never have been in the same frame, were together. Now, I needed to understand every single one of them. Seeing the chief's high level of alert, I didn't dare state my true purpose. My mind raced, and I replied, "Chief, actually it was Lao Wu Baoku, from the photo, who sent me. He wanted me to ask you about that old tiger pattern coin." I began to spin another yarn with a straight face. Given the complex relationships between them, my only option was to use the story Lao Wu had told me last night while drunk to pry some information out of the chief. The effect was immediate. The moment the chief heard tiger pattern coin, his eyes went wide. What? Wasn't taking the book enough for him? He's still thinking about the coin? We already had an agreement back then. Xiao Lu, confused, nudged me and whispered, "Buddy, what are you talking about? I don't understand a word of this." I shot Xiao Lu a look and continued pressing the chief. Lao Wu said he just can't forget that coin, and also, my mind spun again, trying to find a way to bring Lu Yunbua into the conversation. And also that bronze bell that was unearthed a couple of years ago. At this, the chief completely lost his temper. He ripped the straw hat from his head and slammed it on the ground. What the hell does that son of a bitch want? Taking the book wasn't enough, and now he's after the other 2 items. Yeah, Lao Wu was furious when he heard Lu Yunbua came to the village 2 years ago and collected the bell. What right does he have to be furious? Huh? Back then, in that damned spirit cave, if I hadn't saved them, that old bastard would have been left for dead in there. Still fuming, the chief spat. Besides, when Lu Yunbua came for the bell, he paid good money for it. That scoundrel Wu Baoku didn't leave a single dime when he took the book. Seeing the old man had taken the bait, I was thrilled. I decided to provoke him further to get more out of him. Chief, I understand all that, but this Tang Xianxin guy, I had no idea what Lao Tang's connection to them was, so I didn't dare make anything up. I just threw his name out there and let the chief do the talking. Tang Xianxin? He's been dead for 10 years. Why is Wu Baoku bringing him up? I hadn't expected the chief to know about Lao Tang's death. Seeing that this line of questioning was a dead end, I quickly changed the subject. Chief, please calm down. Lao Wu asked me to come find you, but I was 100% against it. I mean, just considering the relationship between him and Lu Yunbua, he shouldn't be doing something like this. The chief sighed and gestured for me and Xiao Lu to sit. We sat down on the edge of the heated brick platform, and the chief continued. Those boys, after they got out of the army, they came here. They were as thick as thieves, close enough to share the same pair of pants. And now look at them, turned into bitter enemies over a few treasures. After all that maneuvering, I finally got it out of him. So Lao Tang, Lu Yunbua, and Lao Wu really were army buddies. After saying this, the chief paused, a look of confusion on his face. He looked at me and asked, wait a minute. I gave that tiger pattern coin to Xiao Wang last year. He knows about this. What else did Baoku send you to ask? The chief's sudden question caught me completely off guard. I was speechless, stammering, unable to come up with another lie. Seeing me hesitate, the chief seemed to figure it out. Tisk TSK. I say, you two kids, you're not trying to pry information out of me, are you? Now that my cover was blown, I couldn't press him any further. I forced a laugh and said, you're joking, sir. What could I possibly get from an old gentleman like you? We mostly just came to see you. The chief's eyes scanned the room, from the floor to the platform. His face hardened, and he said sternly, don't lie, kid. You two came empty-handed. Who visits an old man without bringing a gift? Isait inutli. Even at his age, his mind was still so keen. I pulled $200 from my pocket and handed it to the chief. Chief, we were in such a hurry to catch our ride that we forgot to buy you a proper gift. Please take this. The chief didn't hesitate. He took the money, a grin spreading across his face. You're a clever one, kid. This old coot almost fell for your trick. The chief was too smart. At this point, it was basically impossible to get anything more out of him. I exchanged a few pleasantries with him and then left. The chief walked us all the way to the road. Just as I was about to get in the car, he pulled me back and whispered, Kid, if you want to know more, come back next time. You don't need to bring a fancy gift. $200 is just fine. In the car, Xiao Lu was completely bewildered, asking a million questions. My mind was a total mess, and I couldn't be bothered to explain anything to him. Still, the trip to Tiger Ridge was worth it. At the very least, I could now confidently cross a few more people off my list of trusted individuals. Lu Yinbua, Lao Wu. These two were hiding too many secrets. What I knew was probably just the tip of the iceberg. As for the book the chief mentioned Lao Wu taking, I wasn't interested. Even if it was a treasure worth millions, compared to my life, it was just a useless book. Seeing I wasn't answering him, Xiao Lu muttered, You're something else. Drive all the way out here, failed to trick an old man, and you're out $200. Are you an idiot? I smiled and nodded. Yeah, I'm an idiot. An idiot for trusting so many people, only to be made a fool of. I then thought about the deaths at the company over the past 2 weeks and asked Xiao Lu. Xiao Lu, I've been meaning to ask you. We usually get back from the paper mill around 1 in the morning. But the night you found the man in black, it was already 2. What were you doing in between? Xiao Lu gave another shy smile. Don't even ask. That night, I was driving by the reservoir and saw a woman about to jump in. My eyes went wide. What? Jump in? Yeah, into the reservoir. The moonlight was bright that night, and I saw someone standing by the edge from a distance. I swallowed hard, a lump of fear in my throat. I asked loudly, You got out of the car? You ran to save her. Xiao Lu looked at me, confused, and nodded, as if there was nothing strange about it. I shifted in my seat to face him directly and spoke in the tone one uses to scold child. Xiao Lu, I get that you've never seen a ghost in your life, but haven't you ever watched a horror movie? It's after midnight. You're in the middle of nowhere, and you dare to get out of the car? Weren't you scared? Xiao Lu just scoffed. Buddy, to be honest, and don't get mad, but I've never believed in ghosts. I wasn't scared. I was about to yell at him, but held it back. I lowered my voice and asked, What happened then? The woman was wearing a red dress, and she was already halfway in the water. Luckily, I'm strong, and I managed to pull her out. Hearing red dress, I sucked in a sharp breath of cold air. I didn't speak to Xiao Lu for the rest of the trip. Putting aside whether the woman he saved was human or not, his kindness alone made him unfit to survive in this complicated world, especially in a world filled not just with people, but with all sorts of ghouls and goblins. At 6 in the evening, Xiao Lu and I returned to the company. Since the 2 deaths, the atmosphere had been incredibly tense. All the drivers in the yard looked anxious and on edge. The usual scene of them cracking sunflower seeds, sipping tea, and shooting the breeze was gone. The information I got from the chief had made me lose faith in everyone. I began to doubt every single word Lu Yunbua had ever said to me, including his warning that I had to keep driving the last run of the Route 13 bus. That night, I wrestled with my decision in the dorm for a long time. Finally, at 11 o'clock, I took the bus out. My reasoning was simple. If this was the one thing Lu Yunbua hadn't lied about, then I would have died for nothing by not driving. It had been a few days since I'd driven the night shift, and especially after the Bronze Bell murder, the psychological weight was heavier than ever. The wind was cool tonight, the moonlight bright. The trip from the main station to the paper mill was, as usual, an empty run. On the way back, I deliberately sped up as I approached the reservoir, intending to blow right past it. But just as I reached the edge of the reservoir, my morbid curiosity got the better of me, and I glanced toward the bank. That one glance was all it took. I saw a figure walking step by step toward the water. From the back, it looked like a woman. I glanced at the time, and my blood ran cold. 12:15 a.m. I couldn't believe it. The very thing Xiao Lu had told me about during the day was happening to me that same night. The bus was about to fly past. If I didn't hit the brakes now, it would be too late to save her. What should I do? Is she human or a ghost? Do I save her or not? 1,000 horses stampeded through my mind. When faced with someone trying to end their life, could I really do nothing, especially if I wasn't sure she was a ghost? But if I got out of the car to save her, wouldn't I be just as big of an idiot as Xiao Lu? My mind was a tangled mess, and my palms were sweating. In the final seconds, I grit my teeth and slammed on the brakes. To hell with it. If I die, I die. I guess at my core, I'm still a good person. In the end, I hit the brakes. I ran toward the edge of the reservoir, toward the woman in the red dress who was about to take her own life. I had already prepared for the worst as I ran toward the woman in the red dress. If she wasn't human, I'd just consider it my last good deed in the world of the living. Hopefully, it would earn me a little less suffering in the underworld. My legs trembling, I sprinted for all I was worth. The woman ahead seemed to sense me coming and quickened her pace toward the water. Just as she was about to step into it, I grabbed her arm and, with a great heave, swung her back onto the bank. The woman lay on the ground, crying ceaselessly. I glanced back at her, panting heavily. In the bright moonlight, I found myself completely captivated. She was breathtakingly beautiful. Long eyelashes, shimmering, watery eyes, a high-bridged nose, a stunningly curvaceous figure. I'd always thought Bai Fan was the most beautiful woman in the world, but the delicate features of this woman in red seemed to surpass even hers. The woman in the red dress looked up at me, her face a mask of tear-streaked beauty, and said, "Thank you, but you really shouldn't have saved me." Her words provoked me. I pointed at my phone and snapped. "Shouldn't have saved you? Look at the time. It's midnight. Who else but a dumbass like me would dare to come and save you?" The woman in red whispered, "A few days ago, I tried to end my life too. A young guy in a car saved me then." Her reply left me speechless. I nodded awkwardly, completely at a loss for words. "Right, you're right? There was another dumbass, so that makes 2 of us." The woman in red stopped crying. She stood up, gave me a deep bow, and then turned and walked toward the road. My trembling legs finally steadied. She was gone. She hadn't killed me. The woman wasn't a ghost. I didn't have the energy to care where she was going so late at night. Between me and Xiao Lu, we'd save her life twice. We'd done more than enough. When I got back to the dorm, Xiao Lu was already snoring up a storm. I crawled into bed, but just tossed and turned, unable to sleep. My mind kept replaying the image of the suicidal woman in the red dress. Why would someone want to die when they have a perfectly good life? Life's not easy for anyone. No matter how much you lose or how little you gain, you gotta hold on to hope. My thoughts drifted until, finally, I fell asleep to the sound of Xiao Lu's thunderous snoring. Just as dawn was breaking, I was woken up by a commotion in the courtyard below. Xiao Lu burst through the door with a bang, making my heart jump. "Dude, something's happened again. Get up quick." I blearily glanced at him, rolled over, and mumbled, "Don't bother me with any of that crap. I didn't get to sleep until 3 last night." Xiao Lu said excitedly, "The Bronze Bell. It's killed again. Hearing that, I shot bolt upright in bed. When did it happen? Who died? Sigh. Xiao Lu sighed and continued. It's not one of ours. I breathed a sigh of relief and was about to lie back down when Xiao Lu added. It's a woman, and she was wearing a red dress. What? I couldn't lie down after that. The hairs on the back of my neck stood straight up. Wearing a red dress? What did she look like? Xiao Lu shook his head. The first floor has been sealed off for a while. The main door's always locked. I heard she smashed her way in through the glass with her head. Her whole head is a bloody mess. You can't make out her face. I slumped back against the wall, all the strength draining from my body. Xiao Lu grabbed a glass of water from the table, took a big gulp, and went on. It's strange, but from her clothes and her silhouette, she looks exactly like that person I told you about, the one who tried to kill herself at the reservoir. The more I thought about it, the more wrong it felt. I scrambled out of bed, threw on some clothes, and bolted downstairs. Xiao Lu shouted my name and followed right behind me. The courtyard below was packed with people. Police officers with grim expressions moved in and out of the first-floor entrance. I pushed my way to the front of the crowd, but I could only get close enough to catch a glimpse of the lobby from a distance. Inside the lobby, the bronze bell stood silently to one side. Kneeling before it was a woman in a bright red dress. I couldn't see any more details, but I was certain the dead woman kneeling there was the same person I had saved at the reservoir last night. The police were busy all morning. Eventually, they covered the body with a white sheet and carried it away. The incident made every news outlet in the city explode. The bronze bell had killed again. A triple kill. The city sent in a team of experts to form a special task force, vowing to crack the case within a month. In less than half a month, 3 people had died by smashing their heads against the bronze bell. The 3 victims had no connection to each other and had no known conflicts in their lives, yet they all died bizarrely in the same spot. The explanation of suicide could no longer satisfy the public's curiosity. But out of everyone, I was the one who understood it the least. When the woman in red and I parted ways last night, she was clearly heading east. How did she inexplicably end up dead at the company building? Could she have turned around after she left me? Right now, apart from mourning for her and feeling helpless, I also felt a sense of peace for having stepped in to save her last night. If I hadn't saved her at the reservoir, and this happened today, I would have blamed myself for the rest of my life. Xiao Lu lamented at my side. We saved you once, but there was no one to save you the second time. And I thought to myself, we saved you a second time, but you still died on your 3rd attempt. The incident had such a severe impact that the city decided to expand the cordoned-off area and assign police officers to guard the perimeter 24/7. The massive courtyard, except for the parking spaces, was now almost entirely sealed off around the first floor. Lao Wu's face was dark as thunder. He was getting chewed out by corporate executives, by the police chief, by city officials. He used to have people kissing his ass all day, and now he was the one getting his ass kicked. I saw everything Lao was going through, but I felt no sympathy for him. A man full of lies doesn't deserve forgiveness. The next few nights on the late shift were relatively peaceful. Perhaps the villagers finally decided the ox carts were too inconvenient, as some of them had started taking the bus. But every night when I passed Blackwood Reservoir, my nerves were on edge. Too much had happened here. When villagers were on the bus, I was glad for the company, which made it less scary. On the other hand, I was genuinely worried that the bus would lose control and plunge into the reservoir, just like it did on the night of the 15th. Tonight was my shift. I started my route as usual. Just as I was about to leave the city limits, a large group of villagers carrying vegetable baskets got on. After the villagers had settled in, I was about to start the bus when I caught sight of an old man sitting by the window. Uncle Lu. I hadn't seen him since he told me that the old 2-story building held Lao Tang's secret. Back when he introduced me to Lu Yunbua, I was so grateful I could have knelt down and thanked him. But now that I knew the connection between Lu Yunbua and Lao Tang, just looking at Uncle Lu made my teeth itch with hatred. Uncle Lu nodded at me and pulled out a long-stemmed pipe from his waist. Mind if I light up? I kept my eyes on the road, not even turning my head, and snapped back, No, you can't. No smoking on the bus. It's the rule. Uncle Lu paused, then chuckled and tucked his pipe away again. Sonny, that old 2-story building I told you about, did you go? I went. Almost got myself killed, and all I found was a useless file folder. When Uncle Lu heard file folder, his eyes lit up. Right. What did it say? Nothing much. Just the personnel files for 3 drivers. Uncle Lu sighed. That's not right. That's not it. I had already lost my patience with him. I asked in a low, annoyed voice. Uncle Lou, I've got no grudge against you, right? Just tell me what you're really after. Stop playing games with my life. The more I spoke, the angrier I got, my voice rising. I'm not even going to get on your case about going through all that trouble to steal a useless damn folder from that building, Uncle Lou. But even for my fans' sake, you can't just. I wanted to bring up Lou Yunbua, but the words died on my lips. It was true that Lou Yunbua brought the murderous, evil Belle to the company. But when I thought about it, while he hadn't helped me, he hadn't exactly harmed me either. Uncle Lou looked down, pulled out his pipe again, and asked with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes, "Mind if I have a smoke?" I was so angry I almost had a laugh. Fine, fine, fine. Smoke. Go ahead and smoke. Uncle Lou unhurriedly lit his pipe and took a puff. Sonny, if I hadn't helped you, you would have been dead on the night of the 15th. Those words hit me like a ton of bricks. I still have nightmares about that terrifying moment on the 15th. I've always wondered how the bus managed to stop just as it was about to plunge into the reservoir. I had to hand it to him. That one sentence completely stunned me. Uncle Lou smiled triumphantly. Don't ask me how I did it. If you want to live, Sonny, you need to keep searching for the secret in that old building. He was an old fox, all right. I'd spent the whole ride feeling like I had the moral high ground, and he shut me down with a single sentence that hit me right where it hurt. He was right. 3 drivers, 3 busloads of people, all dead on the night of the 15th 10 years ago. Why was I the one who survived? Even if I didn't want to believe that he and Lou Yunbua had saved me, I couldn't think of anyone else who could have. My face flushed red with frustration, but I couldn't think of a single comeback. We reached the paper mill at the end of the line in awkward silence. As Uncle Lou was getting off the bus, he clapped me on the shoulder with a victorious smile and whispered, "Next month, on the 15th of the lunar calendar, if you still don't want to die, go to Tiger Ridge. Find a tiger-striped copper coin." Before I could even process what he said, Uncle Lou was already off the bus and walking away. I leaned back in the driver's seat, completely dumbfounded, my anger rising up to my throat. I'm 33 years old, an age when a man should be in control of his own destiny. Why was my life in someone else's hands? And the most infuriating part was, I couldn't fucking tell if they were good guys or bad guys, human or ghost. Son of a bitch. I slammed my hand on the steering wheel in a fit of rage. The honk of the horn echoed down the pitch-black country road. I took a few deep breaths to calm myself. Just as I was about to close the door and head back to the station, I heard the sound of hurried footsteps behind me. A beautiful woman with delicate features and a graceful figure ran onto the bus, but my eyes went wide with a feeling that was anything but happiness. She was wearing a long red dress. She was the suicidal girl I'd saved by the reservoir a few nights ago, and the very same person who had knelt before the bronze bell and died that same day. Goosebumps erupted all over my skin. I instinctively recoiled. But aren't you dead? The woman in the red dress froze when she heard me. I'm not dead. You saved me by the reservoir a few days ago, remember? My head just about exploded. I was pretty much at my breaking point. Things were chaotic enough, and now this? On the day it happened, I'd seen her in the hall from a distance. I didn't catch her face, but the dress, the figure, it had to be the same person. How was she standing right in front of me, alive and well, just a few days later? Was it really her who died that day? I glanced at her timidly and stammered, "Look, miss, whatever's going on with you, I did save your life once. So, just take it easy on me, okay?" The girl in the red dress giggled. "You're a strange one. You were brave enough to get out of your bus to save me after midnight a few nights ago. How come you're looking at me like I'm a ghost now?" I nodded awkwardly and started the bus. On the road, I kept an eye on the girl in the red dress through the rearview mirror. She just sat in the back, head down, playing on her phone. I cleared my throat and asked, "Miss, where are you headed this late at night?" Without looking up, the girl in the red dress replied softly, "To the funeral home." Screech! I slammed on the brakes. The bus lurched forward violently, and the girl in the back let out a yelp. Ouch! My throat went dry. The funeral home. Without a second thought, I threw open the driver's side door and bolted. Halfway out of the bus, I glanced back at her out of the corner of my eye. The girl in the red dress was clutching her forehead, her hand covered in blood. Wait, do ghosts bleed? I froze, one foot on the pavement and one still in the bus, and just stared at her. She, on the other hand, was getting angry. "Are you crazy? Why are you driving the late-night shift if you're such a coward?" I was panting heavily, speechless, my eyes still locked on her. The girl pulled out a tissue and pressed it to her forehead. In moments, it was soaked through with fresh blood. "I've been abroad for a few years," she said, her voice soft. "My boyfriend was waiting for me back home, but I couldn't get in touch with him for the last month. When I flew back, I found out he passed away a few days ago." By the last sentence, her voice was choked with tears. "We were childhood sweethearts, and we were very close. I was in such despair that I tried to kill myself twice, but both times I was saved, once by you and once by another driver." I let out a long sigh of relief and pulled my leg back into the bus. "Then why are you going to the funeral home in the middle of the night?" "After failing to die twice, I've come to terms with it. I bought a plane ticket to go back the day after tomorrow. I just want to see him one last time at the funeral home before I leave." As she finished, she took off the blood-soaked tissue and pressed a few fresh ones against the wound. I got back into the driver's seat. Neither of us spoke, and the atmosphere turned awkward. I faked a cough and slowly started the bus again. Once we got into the city, the girl got off. Before she left, she stuffed a thick envelope into my hand. After she was gone, I opened it. Inside were 2 thick wads of cash and a note. "Thank you for saving my life. I specifically took your bus into the city tonight to express my gratitude. If the other driver who saved me is a colleague of yours, please give the other half of this money to him and tell him I said thank you." I folded the note, pocketed the money, and cursed myself the whole way back. I'd really been letting fear get the best of me lately. The girl who had died kneeling in front of the bronze bell a few days ago must have been like that first time with the fat guy, just someone wearing the same clothes. The next morning, I tossed a thick wad of cash on his sickbed. When Six saw all the money, his jaw dropped. "What's this, bro? Did the company hand out bonuses?" "Yep. Heard you saved someone a few days ago. This is a bonus from fate." Six was grinning from ear to ear. He turned and stashed the money away. I stood there, stunned. He just took the money without even asking where it really came from. I've been alive for over 30 years, and he was honestly the first person I'd ever met who was that simple-minded. "I have to go to Tiger Creek Mountain. I might have to stay the night. If I don't make it back, cover my shift for me, will you?" Six asked quizzically. "What for? Going to scam some old man again? Lose another 200? I shot him a look. "It's personal business. Just remember to clock in for me and drive my route." "All right. And since I just got a bonus, I'll treat you to a real good meal, my treat." With that, Six threw an arm around my shoulder and dragged me out to a restaurant. I couldn't taste a thing during the meal. All I could think about were Uncle Six's words from last night. "You have to keep looking for the secret of the small 2-story building." The secret he mentioned had to be the other 2 file folders. But what did Old Tang's secret have to do with Uncle Six? What was even weirder was that not only did Uncle Six know about the building, he also knew about the tiger-striped copper coin old Wu had mentioned. His words were seared into my brain. "If you want to live past the 15th of next lunar month, you have to go to Tiger Creek Mountain and find a tiger-striped copper coin." Even if I had 10,000 reasons not to go, I had to bite the bullet. Tiger Creek Village. Coming back here felt like a lifetime had passed. The local villagers were busy working in the fields. I envied how simple their lives were. My last encounter with the village chief taught me a little about him. His greatest weakness was his greed. So this time I brought the entire wad of cash the girl in red had given me. It was easy money anyway. If I could use it to save my own life, it would be a bargain. I got out of my vehicle and headed straight for the chief's house. At a corner near the village entrance, I ran into the same young man I'd seen herding an ox before. He was holding a water bottle in his left hand and leading the old ox with his right. When he saw me, his expression did the same thing. It shifted from indifference to a smile, then snapped back to indifference just as quickly. As I passed him, I gave him a polite nod. To my surprise, the young man suddenly grabbed me and started pouring the water from his bottle over my head. As he poured, he giggled foolishly and said, "It tastes better with some soy sauce." I quickly broke free and gave him a hard shove. A woman working in a nearby field rushed over, pulled him behind her, and said apologetically, "I'm so sorry. My son's not all there in the head. Are you hurt?" I wiped the water off myself and replied, annoyed, "It's fine, no problem." I turned to continue toward the chief's house. I hadn't gone far when I thought I faintly heard the woman whisper, "Son, do you really want to eat it?" While I looked back again, the 2 of them were already leading the ox away, disappearing into the distance. I shook my head. I've been dealing with too much during the day and not sleeping well at night. I was just exhausted. The chief's courtyard was as spacious as I remembered. As luck would have it, the chief himself was in the yard, shucking corn. The moment he saw me, he stood up with a smile. "Well, if it isn't my little money bags." I shook his hand awkwardly. "Chief, you could just call me Ali." I came back to see how you were doing." The chief grabbed my hand, grinning from ear to ear, and led me inside. "Lee, you were just here a few days ago. What's on your mind this time?" The chief was a sharp one. I didn't dare be too direct. "It's nothing, Chief. I've just been stressed from work lately. I was thinking, would it be all right if I stayed here in the countryside for a night?" The chief's eyes crinkled as he smiled and nodded. "Of course. Why not? You can stay for a few days if you like. This house has 2 rooms, and it's usually just me." After some more small talk, the chief went to prepare my bedding for the night. I took the opportunity to go to the small village store and buy some liquor and cooked food. On my way back from the store, I passed by house after house, and everyone was busy herding their chickens and ducks into their coops. But the strange thing was, all the coops had locks on them. My hometown is in the countryside too, and we raise chickens and ducks. Our coops were just simple sheds. Once you herded the birds in, you just prop something against the door to keep it shut. Why lock the coops? Was the crime rate in this village really that bad? On the road, I also met a little boy who frantically asked if I'd seen his family's lost cow. I shook my head. An old man from behind him grabbed him and pulled him back, muttering, "It's getting dark. Stop looking. Just forget about the cow." When I got back to the chief's house, he saw the liquor and food I was carrying, and he was so happy his eyes practically disappeared into a smile. We sat at a low table, and I poured the chief a full glass of liquor. "Chief, I'm really imposing on you today." "Nonsense. It's nice to have some company and a good chat." I raised my glass to the chief, picked up a piece of braised pork, and said with feigned nonchalance, "By the way, Chief, that demon cave you mentioned last time I was here, I'm really interested. Could you tell me more about it?" The chief chuckled and pointed a finger at me. "You young people are always interested in these strange places." I nodded in agreement. "Ah, the demon cave. It's at the west end of the village. It used to be just a cornfield, but then they dug up a tomb under it." "A tomb?" I exclaimed in surprise. That wasn't what Old Wu had told me. He'd said it was just a narrow, sealed tunnel. Yep, and man, it was a huge tomb. A few of the more reckless kids snuck inside. If I hadn't been passing by, they would have all died in there. The chief then pointed to a photo on the wall. "See? That's them, the little rascals." I smiled. "Hey, that's Old Wu and his friends. I know Old Wu pretty well. I'm familiar with these guys." The chief sighed. "You knew him well. That was before they went down into the demon cave." I poured the chief another drink, leaned in a little closer, and asked, "What do you mean?" "Old Wu told me about the things they found. They didn't seem that valuable to me." The chief got defensive. "Not valuable? You're dead wrong. They brought 2 treasures out of that demon cave. An antiques dealer came all the way out to the village to buy them. He made a 7-figure offer." I thought my tolerance for alcohol was low, but the chief's was even worse. After just 2 glasses, his eyes were already glazing over. As he said 7-figure, he actually held up 6 fingers. "But that stuff is a little cursed, especially that cop, per coin." His words started to slur, and he swayed. Before he could finish his sentence, he slumped onto the table, out cold. I slapped my thigh. Crap, I'd gotten him too drunk. I cleared the table and helped the chief into bed, covering him with a quilt. The chief's house had 2 rooms, one east and one west. After settling the chief, I went to the west room. Tucked in bed, I was still mulling over the matter of the copper coin. Beating around the bush wasn't going to work. I made up my mind. In the morning, I just slapped the wad of cash on the table and have it out with him. I checked the time. It was midnight. I had just turned off the light to go to sleep when I heard a frantic knocking at the door. Knock, 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 knock. I sat up. "Who is it?" "Chief, are you awake?" There was no answer, just another round of knocking. Knock, knock, knock. I figured the chief was probably drunk and confused. I got out of bed to open the door. Just as my hand touched the handle, a sentence flashed in my mind. It was from 2 weeks ago at 2386 Faraway Road. The message the woman had passed on from Lu Qingzhu. "Don't answer the door." I hesitated, pulling my hand back. I called out softly toward the door again. "Is that you, Chief?" I was already asleep. "What do you need?" Still no answer from the other side. I felt something was wrong and backed away a few steps. Even if it was the chief, what would he want from me in the middle of the night? I sat back on the bed, my eyes fixed on the door, and ignored it. Knock, knock, knock. Knock, knock, knock. The knocking continued, on and off, until 3 in the morning. My nerves were stretched taut. I didn't dare relax for a second. I finally let out a breath of relief when I heard the rooster crow. Daylight had arrived. Even after the knocking stopped, I was too scared to sleep. I just sat on the bed, wrapped in a quilt all night. Around 6, the chief pushed the door open, looking nervous. When he saw me sitting on the bed, He breathed a long sigh of relief. He came closer and whispered, You didn't open the door last night, did you? With dark circles under my eyes from a sleepless night, I nodded and asked, What, wasn't you knocking? The chief was about to speak when the knocking started again. Before, it had been dark and I was alone, so I'd kept my fear in check. But now, with the sun up, my short temper flared. I grabbed a small stool from the floor, and without a second thought, I threw open the door and swung it. Ouch! Came a cry from behind the door. My eyes went wide. I was completely shocked. It was Lu Qingzhu. The sight of Lu Qingzhu filled me with a fear no different than seeing a ghost. I hadn't seen him in days, but he looked the same as ever, skinny as a rail, dressed in a tattered cloth shirt, his right eye glittering like a green gem. I'd whacked the old man with a stool, and he was now lying on the ground, groaning and clutching his head. The village chief rushed over to help Lu Qingzhu up, scolding me. You young punk, why are you so impulsive? Look what you did to the old gentleman. Lu Qingzhu got to his feet, waved a hand, and said, It's nothing. I'm not dead yet. Influenced by Sixth Uncle and Lu Yunbua, I'd always been hostile toward Lu Qingzhu, and looking at his wrinkled, grim-looking face, he really didn't seem like a good person. But I had to admit, from his first warning of, too many people, don't get on to last night to knock on the door, don't open, his prophetic words had certainly served as a wake-up call. I asked doubtfully, Sir, what brings you here? Lu Qingzhu glanced up at me. What's it to you? You own this village. I knew he had a bad temper and didn't want to get into it with him, so I kept my mouth shut. The chief shot me a glare. What kind of way is that to talk? You're allowed here, but he isn't? A visitor is a guest. Sir, please come in and have a seat. The chief helped Lu Qingzhu inside and sat him down, then told me to go to the diner on the east side of the village and pick up a couple of dishes. That chief was a real smooth operator. He got to play the good guy, while I was the one stuck paying for the food. I hadn't slept a wink last night, and I was starting to feel drowsy on my way to the diner. As I passed the intersection, I saw a large group of villagers gathered by a field, chattering away. Curious, I pushed my way into the crowd. In the center of the crowd was a yellow ox that had died a gruesome death. Its bloodshot eyes were wide open, as if it had seen something terrifying. Its neck was torn to shreds by some unknown creature, and blood pooled on the ground. It was an incredibly brutal scene. A little girl was kneeling beside the ox, sobbing uncontrollably. I recognized her instantly. It was the same girl who had been looking for her ox last evening. An old man was trying to pull her up, but she wouldn't budge, her cries only growing more desperate. Sob, Old Yellow is dead. Without him to plow the fields, I won't have money for a new school bag. The girl's crying was so pitiful that I pulled 200 yuan from my pocket and handed it to her. Don't cry, little sister. Take this money. Consider it a gift from a big brother for a new school bag. The girl, her eyes red and swollen, looked up at me and timidly took the money. The old man tried to intervene, repeatedly saying, We can't take your money. That's not right. That's not right. It's okay, I said, patting the girl's head before turning to leave the crowd. I hadn't gone far when the old man caught up to me. Young man, you don't look like you're from around here. Are you visiting someone? I nodded. I'm just here for a visit, sir. Hearing this, the old man leaned in and whispered, Son, there's nothing to see here. You listen to me. You should leave. Quickly. I nodded again. All right, sir. Thanks for the warning. Seeing that I'd agreed, he turned and went back to the little girl. A month ago, his words would have sent me running back to the city in a cold sweat. But now, after 15 nights of peril and witnessing a murder by a bronze bell, I was a man who had stared death in the face. I had built up some mental defenses. I bought 2 dishes and a few bottles of liquor from the diner and headed back to the chief's house. To my surprise, the 2 old men were sitting cross-legged on the heated brick bed, chatting away like old friends. When he saw me, the chief set up a small table with the food and drinks, beaming. Come, Brother Lu, you've traveled so far. Eat up while it's hot. My face darkened. In such a short time, these 2 had already started calling each other brother. Feeling invisible, I forced my way into the conversation. Chief, if it wasn't you knocking on my door all night, then who was it? The chief's smile vanished instantly, his face clouding over. It wasn't a who. It wasn't human. His words piqued my interest. If it wasn't human, then what was it? The chief raised his glass, then set it down with a sigh. In our village, we have a rule. When night falls, every house must lock its doors. Any living thing left outside, it's guaranteed not to be alive the next morning. What is it? A tiger from the mountains or something? I asked, astonished. The chief waved his hand dismissively. Don't ask what it is. It was my fault yesterday. I passed out drunk before I could tell you. I was about to ask more, but Lu Qingzhu, sitting opposite me, shot me a meaningful look. What the hell are you winking at me for? I thought. It's not like we're on the same side. After the meal, it was already afternoon. I went out for a walk, the smell of liquor on my breath, and was surprised to see Lu Qingzhu following me, leaning on a stick. I gave him a dirty look and kept walking. Don't you want to know what was knocking at your door last night? He asked in a low voice, staying close behind me. Without turning back, I said coldly, an animal, obviously. We're right next to Coyote Ridge. There are plenty of wild beasts around here. It's normal. It wasn't an animal. It was a person. I let out a dry laugh and turned to stare into Lu Qingzhu's gem-like green eye. Sir, the chief already said it wasn't a person. Why are you arguing? Fine, then tell me, which person was it? A dead person. Lu Qingzhu delivered the line without a hint of hesitation. A shiver ran down my spine. You're looking for the tiger-striped bronze coin, aren't you? Stay one more night. I'll take you somewhere. I had planned to leave today, but his words stopped me cold. How do you know I'm looking for the coin? He didn't answer directly. He just said quietly, you have many questions for me. Come with me tonight, and I'll tell you the truth, one piece at a time. Those were the words I had been waiting for so long. I'd been manipulated by one person after another, trapped in a mystery. More than anything, I wanted the truth. You know what I want to ask? The pupil of his green, gem-like, I seemed to contract slightly. The secrets of Old Tang, Old Wu, Lu Yunbua's sixth uncle, and my own. His words struck me like a thunderbolt. He had just named every single one of the deepest questions buried in my heart. I gritted my teeth and nodded. Fine, I'll go with you tonight. But you have to keep your word. Lu Qingzhu just smiled and said nothing more. The wind picked up, and his skeletal frame swayed, looking as if a strong gust could blow him apart. That evening, Lu Qingzhu and I stayed in the West Room. The village chief, having had too much to drink at dinner, was passed out cold. At 10 o'clock, when the sky was pitch black, Lu Qingzhu beckoned for me to follow him for a walk through the village. My heart screamed in protest. After all, I had seen that brutally killed ox with my own eyes. But Lu Qingzhu hadn't. Could I trust him? Still, his promise to reveal all the secrets was too tempting to resist. I followed his emaciated figure out of the house, my heart pounding. I felt completely unsafe. The rural night was unnaturally silent. Not even the chirping of crickets or the croaking of frogs could be heard from the fields. Fortunately, the bright moonlight allowed us to see each other's faces. We walked through the village's narrow paths until we reached a house with a light still on inside. Lu Qingzhu whispered, "This is the place." Now, we wait. We crouched behind a woodpile, watching the lit house. We stayed there, motionless, until midnight. My patience had worn thin, and I was just about to speak when the door creaked open. A young man, about 20 years old, emerged and staggered out of the yard. Lu Qingzhu gave me a look, and we began to follow the man from a distance of about 20 yards. He walked incredibly slowly. After another 20 minutes, he arrived at a dilapidated shack in the fields on the west side of the village. The young man went inside, and all went quiet. Just as I was stifling a yawn, a blood-curdling scream erupted from the shack. I jumped, a shiver running through my entire body, and stared intently at the shack. As I focused all my attention on it, Lu Qingzhu nudged me and pointed to the other side of the building. Another figure was approaching the shack from the west. They were short and were dragging something long behind them on the ground, something that didn't seem to be cooperating as it would occasionally struggle. I held my breath. What was that thing they were dragging? It looked like a person. I stole a glance at Lu Qingzhu, but his expression was unchanged. A few minutes later, another piercing scream tore through the shack. In the deep silence of the night, the horrific sound made me clench my fists, sweat beading on my forehead. The screaming stopped after a few seconds. The shack door opened, and the two figures came out, one after the other. In the moonlight, I saw their backs and suddenly realized, isn't that the young cowherd and the older woman from when I first arrived in the village? The pair walked out of the shack and disappeared behind it. Lu Qingzhu glanced back at me. You wait here. I need to go inside and take a look. Before I could object, he got up and walked toward the shack. I had never witnessed anything like this. My heart was pounding so hard, I thought it would burst from my chest. Lu Qingzhu was inside for 3, maybe 5 minutes and still hadn't come out. I was so tense, I was digging my fingernails into my palms. Suddenly, I felt something behind me, getting closer and closer. I whipped my head around. It was him, the slow-witted young cowherd I'd seen during the day. He was grinning from ear to ear, his huge face less than 2 inches from mine. Every hair on my body stood on end. I tried to scramble to my feet and run for my life, but all that came out was a curse. Shit, my leg's asleep. The cowherd's face got closer and closer, about to touch the tip of my nose. At this critical moment, my leg went numb. I screamed, scrambling forward like a madman. Lu Qingzhu, save me. Just as the cowherd was about to pounce, I saw the wooden door of the dilapidated hut not far ahead get kicked open with a bang. Lu Qingzhu stood at the entrance, leaning on his staff. In the moonlight, his emerald green right eye looked especially dazzling. I don't know what spooked the cowherd, but he immediately turned tail and ran for his life. Still shaken, I gasped for breath. I scrambled to my feet and dragged my numb right leg, limping towards Lu Qingzhu. Seeing my state, Lu Qingzhu hurried over in a panic. What's wrong, son? Did you hurt your leg? The question caught me off guard. At a time like this, could I really tell him my leg had just fallen asleep? It's nothing, I just bumped it. Only then did Lu Qingzhu relax. He looked around and said, that thing must have discovered us. Pretty clever. I wiped the sweat from my forehead with my sleeve, soaking the fabric through. Old man Lu, what did you see inside that little shack? Lu Qingzhu closed his eyes and shook his head. If you want to be able to eat for the next month, don't ask. Although I was dying of curiosity about the screams from the shack and whatever that woman had dragged inside, Lu Qingzhu's refusal told me that whatever was in there was most likely disgusting beyond belief. With that in mind, I stopped asking questions and followed him towards the village chief's house. On the way, I gave the skinny, grimy old man a new once-over. In my mind, he was just a malevolent ghost who had died in a fire 10 years ago. But now, he seemed to have a certain masterly aura about him, especially the moment he kicked that door open. His presence was absolutely incredible. Old man Lu, that kid looked terrified when he saw you. Is he afraid of you? Lu Qingzhu kept his head down as he walked, merely grunting a soft imitation. If you're that powerful, why were you sneaking around? We could have just charged right in. Lu Qingzhu slowed his pace and glanced back at me, annoyed. If I were 20 years younger, you wouldn't have to tell me. But with these legs, do you think I can catch him now? Seeing that Lu Qingzhu's short fuse was lit again, I decided to back off and didn't dare say another word for a long time. It was nearly 2 in the morning by the time we got back to the village chief's house. I lay down, and just as I was about to close my eyes, I remembered something incredibly important. Lu Qingzhu had promised me that if I went with him tonight, he'd tell me the truth. I couldn't wait any longer and blurted out, Old man Lu, before we left, you promised. You said if I listened to you and came along, you would tell me the secrets you know. Lu Qingzhu nodded. Fine. Ask away. What do you want to know? One question. I took a deep breath. There was so much I wanted to know, but with only one question, it was hard to choose what to ask. Then a thought struck me. Right, I first needed to figure out who could actually help me. I had just witnessed Lu Qingzhu's abilities firsthand. He was definitely the real deal, not like Lu Yunbua, who was all talk and just gave me a bracelet. What I needed to figure out now was whether this new pillar of support, Lu Qingzhu, was reliable. I formulated my question. I've heard that 10 years ago, a fire at the 2386 Crestwood Drive apartments burned down half the building. I want to know, did you die in that fire? Are you a man or a ghost? Lu Qingzhu took off his shoes, climbed onto the Kong, and burrowed into his quilt before answering in a low voice. The fire 10 years ago didn't kill me. I'm a man, not a ghost. Hearing that, a huge weight was finally lifted from my shoulders. Then was Lu Yunbua the one who died? Is he a man or a ghost? Lu Qingzhu rolled over, turning his back to me. I said one question. If you want to ask more, you do as I say. Though his reply had seemed casual, there was an earnest sincerity to it. I believed him completely and was too excited to sleep. It's ironic, really. After all this time, I've finally figured out if one person around me is a damn human or a ghost. What about the others? No rush. One by one, I'll figure them all out. I made up my mind. I was sticking with Lu Qingzhu from now on. Since he was human, Lu Yunbua had to be the ghost. He must have been the one who died in the fire 10 years ago. At this thought, I sucked in a sharp breath. Did that mean the black beaded bracelet he gave me was really made from human eyeballs? I hadn't slept at all the night before, and as I mulled things over, drowsiness finally took hold, and I drifted off. When I woke up, the sun was already high in the sky. I opened my eyes to find the village chief and Lu Qingzhu staring down at me from either side of the bed. I jumped in fright. What's going on? Why are you two staring at me? The village chief pursed his lips. You're a man in your 30s, so why do you act like a child? If we don't wake you, you'll never get up. I grabbed my phone to check the time. Holy crap, it was noon. I sat up and pulled on my clothes. Lu Qingzhu, leaning on his staff, said softly, Can you stay one more night? One more night. I was supposed to be on duty last night. Xiao Lu had already covered for me for one night. If I didn't go back tonight, I didn't know if he'd be willing to do it again. I hesitated for a moment. Can I ask another question then? Lu Qingzhu nodded. Of course. Then I'll stay one more night. But it's the last one. I've already missed a day of work. A rare smile touched Lu Qingzhu's lips. He stood up and went to the east room with the village chief. I'm not the type to bully the meek, and I felt bad about making Xiao Lu cover for me again. But this was such a good opportunity to get some answers, I just had to take it. After lunch, I gave Xiao Lu a call. Xiao Lu was cheerful on the phone and agreed right away, insisting it was no problem and I should stay as long as I wanted. He could handle it. I was actually really touched. Xiao Lu might not have money, status, ability, or looks. He didn't have a girlfriend or friends. He wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed and was a bit gullible, but he was kind and dependable. A truly good brother. Lu Qingzhu seemed pleased that I had agreed and was unusually talkative today. We chatted as we strolled through the village. We happened to reach the ancient well at the village entrance, which was wrapped in red cloth and had a red flag stuck in it. I asked, puzzled, Old Lu, the first time I came to this village, I tried to get a closer look at this well, but some kid shouted at me to stop. Is there a story behind it? Lu Qingzhu seemed taken aback that I called him Old Lu. He said coldly, There's nothing particularly wrong with this village. It's just this well that's unusual. Nothing particularly wrong? Did you forget what happened last night? This place is creepier than any haunted village on TV. Lu Qingzhu seemed to ignore me, his eyes fixed on the old well. You're so powerful, Old Lu. What's one well? Come on, let's go have a closer look. I had just started to take a step when Lu Qingzhu grabbed me. His bony hand was surprisingly strong, and his grip sent a searing pain through my arm. Don't even think about it. It's not just me. No one in the entire Northeast could do a thing about this well. Seeing how serious he was, I subconsciously took a step back. After watching from a distance for a while, I asked, So, are we still going to catch those two tonight? Lu Qingzhu nodded and turned to walk back. Night fell again. The village chief hadn't been drinking tonight. When he heard we were going out, he nearly scared his dentures out. Where are you going? Where? You got a death wish. The village chief leaned against the doorframe, his face a mask of disbelief, blocking our way out. No matter how Lu Qingzhu and I tried to explain, the village chief wouldn't listen to a single word. Let me tell you the truth. Our village used to be called Demon's Jaw Village. Demon, as in a monster. The name was changed to Hillside Bend during the campaign to smash the four olds. Do you get it? Lu Qingzhu glanced at the wall clock. I didn't see him do much of anything, but he just met the village chief's eyes, and the old man suddenly collapsed to the floor in a daze, already snoring. I carried the village chief to the comm, then hurried out the door with Lu Qingzhu. Old Lu, you know hypnosis? He ignored my question and said in a low voice, We have to catch that thing tonight. If it eats for 2 more nights, we'll be in big trouble. Are we going back to the stakeout spot? Lu Qingzhu shook his head. It's long gone from its home. We're going to the north slope of the mountain. I followed Lu Qingzhu along a small path up to the northern hill slope. The area was overgrown with weeds and uncultivated, dotted with quite a few grave mounds. The slope was littered with the corpses of rats and bats. I looked up into the distance and was startled by what I saw. I quickly pointed ahead. Old Lu, look, someone's digging up a grave. Not far off on the north side of the slope, 2 figures were frantically digging at a grave mound. Lu Qingzhu made a be quiet gesture. He crouched down and began to circle around from the side. I followed, close behind him, my heart pounding in my chest again. The 2 figures were so absorbed in their digging that they hadn't noticed us at all. When he was about 10 or 15 feet away, Lu Qingzhu took aim and swoosh through the staff he was holding. The staff hit one of them squarely, and a miserable howl immediately rang out. Lu Qingzhu glanced back at me and yelled, Get him! When the 2 saw Lu Qingzhu, they ran down the mountain like their lives depended on it. The woman was clearly injured and couldn't run very fast. They ran, and Lu Qingzhu and I gave chase. We chased them all the way down the slope. At a fork in the village road, the two of them split up, one heading east and one west. I was about to go after the cowherd, but old Lou, panting heavily, pointed west towards the woman. Chase that one. The woman looked seriously hurt and was on the verge of collapsing. I broke into a sprint and was about to catch her when I suddenly remembered something. My heart suddenly shot into my throat. Lu Qingzhu saw me stop abruptly and asked, confused, "What are you doing?" "Keep chasing her." I looked at him in panic. "Oh no." When we left, I think I forgot to close the door for the village chief. When Lu Qingzhu heard I'd forgotten to close the village chief's gate, he became even more frantic than I was. "I'll handle things here," he yelled. "You get to the chief's house now." I spun around and sprinted towards the chief's house on the east side of the village. The gruesome image of that dead old ox flashed through my mind, and a cold sweat broke out on my back. I tripped and fell 3 times on my mad dash from the west side of the village to the east, but I finally made it. Gasping for breath, I nervously peered into the courtyard. The gate was open. I crept towards the front door and called out softly, "Chief, you in there?" There was no response from inside. I clenched my fists and stepped into the house, 1 foot at a time. The chief lived in the east room, and its door was open too. A terrible feeling washed over me. I shuffled forward nervously, and in the light of my phone, I saw a pool of blood on the ground. A little further, another one. The bloodstains were a smeared, chaotic mess, stretching into the house. It was impossible to tell if the blood had been tracked in from outside or had flowed out from within. I called out again, a little louder. "Chief, sir, if you're in there, just say something." Still, only an eerie silence answered. I took a deep breath and bolted into the room. It was empty. The cups on the bed were knocked aside. A table was overturned, and a massive pool of blood stained the center of the floor. I was on the verge of tears. Where was the chief? I remembered the blood-curdling screams from that dilapidated shack in the fields last night. Remembered the human-like thing being dragged inside. My legs started to shake uncontrollably. I got the village chief killed. Just as despair was about to consume me, Lu Qingzhu returned. "How is it? Is the chief okay?" His urgent voice reached me before he even stepped inside. I squatted on the floor, clutching my head, cursing myself over and over. Lu Qingzhu came in, glanced around, and hauled me to my feet. "Kid, where's the chief?" I couldn't hold it in anymore. I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. "Old Lu, it was my fault. I was careless. I think that man-eating kid got him." Sigh. Old Lu sighed and sat down on the edge of the bed. "What's with all the blood? Did you see the chief at all when you got here?" "No." When I rushed back, the doors to both the inner and outer rooms were wide open. He was already gone. Lu Qingzhu was silent for a moment, then pulled a copper coin from his pocket and turned it over and over in his hand. "Old Lu, do you think he might still be alive? Maybe we should go check that old shack from last night." Lu Qingzhu shook his head. "What's the point? That thing doesn't leave survivors. I reckon by now, the chief's been devoured. Not even a bone left." Hearing him say that, I was overwhelmed with guilt. The chief was in his 70s. He might have been a bit greedy, but other than that, he was a good man. And now, because of my carelessness, he'd met a violent end. Seeing my anguish, Lu Qingzhu tried to console me. "It's not like you did it on purpose. The chief didn't have any family. Make sure you give him a proper cenotaph. Do it respectfully." I nodded, the gut-wrenching regret making me wish I were dead. After sunrise, I found the village undertaker. News of the chief's death spread through the village like wildfire. The villagers spontaneously put on mourning clothes. A long procession of several hundred people saw the chief off. All the way to bury the cenotaph, the villagers' wails shook the heavens, and my heart felt heavier with every step. It was clear the chief had been well-respected and deeply loved by the villagers. After the funeral, Lu Qingzhu and I boarded the bus back to the city. From last night until we got on the bus, Lu Qingzhu had been constantly fiddling with that copper coin. I was in a foul mood. I glanced at the coin in his hand. "Old Lu, I know the chief's death wasn't your fault, but you ate his food, slept in his house. Now that he's gone, don't you feel even a little bit sad?" Lu Qingzhu gave me a cold look. "Everyone has their own fate. What's there for me to be sad about? I'm not the one who forgot to close his gate." The words were clearly barbed. Knowing I was in the wrong, I didn't talk back. "That kid who killed the chief is still out there. Is it really okay for us to just leave?" Old Lu pocketed the coin. "It's over. That thing is useless now." "Useless? What do you mean? I haven't even asked you yet. What happened when you chased that woman last night?" Ahem. Lu Qingzhu coughed twice. I caught her. Got the coin back, didn't I? As long as I have this coin, that kid is nothing more than a lifeless corpse that can't move. I looked at him confused. So that's the tiger stripe coin? What does it actually do? Lu Qingzhu leaned back, looking exhausted. He closed his eyes and said softly, "That thing is possessed by an evil spirit. It's a wicked artifact." I wasn't really interested in the coin, so I didn't press him further. "Old Lu, after all this, can I ask you one more thing?" Lu Qingzhu, looking like he was about to fall asleep, just grunted him. This second question was crucial for me. Ever since I started driving the last bus on Route 13, strange incidents and weird people had been coming at me one after another. Even the chief's death, when it came down to it, was connected to Route 13 in some way. Who was human, who was a ghost, who belonged to whom? None of that damn stuff mattered. The only thing that mattered was whether I could get away, escape this vicious cycle. "Old Lu, I trust you completely now. Tell me, can I quit driving Route 13? I want to move to a different city and start over." Old Lu seemed to have expected this question. He kept his eyes closed, his expression unchanging. "You have to keep driving that bus. This isn't over. If you leave, you die." What a coincidence. His words were exactly the same as what Lu Yunbo had told me. It seemed my fate, for the foreseeable future, was hopelessly entangled with the last bus on Route 13. I leaned back in despair, my heart a desolate wasteland as I watched the trees and flowers blur past the window. Back at the depot, I shuffled toward the dorm, feeling completely dead inside. The main yard was still cordoned off with police tape, leaving only a narrow path for employees to get in and out. On the way, I ran into Old Wu. Without a word, he walked right up and slapped me across the face. "You little bastard, where the hell have you been gallivanting off to?" I wasn't in the mood to argue with him, so I just lowered my head and said nothing. That only made Old Wu more furious. "Why aren't you talking? You've been gone for 2 days, had little Lu cover your shifts, and forge your sign-ins. You think you're hot stuff now, giving yourself a vacation?" I was still wrestling with guilt over the chief's death, so getting chewed out by Old Wu actually felt like a relief. Old Wu hit me again. Hearing that, Old Wu's face turned green with rage. "What, you think I don't have the guts?" Smack! He slapped me again. Those 2 slaps made me feel much better. I looked up at him. "Old Wu, keep going. Hit me harder." Old Wu was stunned. He looked me up and down. "Kid, what's wrong with you? Did something happen?" "Don't worry about it. Just hit me as hard as you can. Come on, do it." I grabbed his arm and tried to make him hit my head. Old Wu yanked his arm back and quickly retreated a few steps. "Are you crazy?" He pointed at me, then threw his hands up in exasperation. "All right, stop messing around. Get back to work tonight. The city's cracking down hard right now." With that, Old Wu gave me a wide berth and walked away. Back in the dorm, Lil Lu was cleaning. The moment he saw me, he threw his arms around me in a hug. "Buddy, you're back." I pushed him off. "Are you disgusting or what?" I grumbled. Little Lu just grinned and sat on the edge of my bed. "So, what were you doing at Coyote Ridge these past few days? Be honest, did you find a girlfriend?" I was in no mood to talk about that. I asked him, "What about you? You tired from driving these past few days? Anything happen?" Little Lu slapped his thigh. "Actually, something great happened." I asked distractedly as I unpacked my bag. "What's that?" "The day before yesterday, while I was driving my route, guess who I ran into? That girl in the red dress. The one I saved by the reservoir." My heart skipped a beat. "What?" Little Lu continued. "I knew you'd be spooked. But listen, she's not dead. The one who died in front of the copper bell wasn't her." I put down what I was holding and sat next to him. "What did she say to you?" With a goofy grin, Little Lu made a money-counting gesture with his fingers. "She asked if I got the money. I thought it was a bonus from the company, but it turns out she sent it. If you told me sooner, I wouldn't have taken it." I was confused. That didn't make sense. That night, the girl in red had clearly said she'd bought a plane ticket and was leaving the country. How did she end up on Little Lu's bus just a few days later? Little Lu, while I was gone, what did the police find out about the Copper Bell murder case? The police said the dead woman in red was also from Coyote Ridge Village. She'd been living abroad for the past few years and had only been back for a few days to see her boyfriend when it happened. The moment Little Lu finished speaking, my heart plunged into an abyss.